And welcome back to the Gnostic Informant, and you are about to attain true gnosis. And today I'm with authors with an S, Aaron Adair and Dr. Aaron Adair, apologize for that, and the great philosopher Jonathan MS Pearce, two great minds together, writing a book together. And as you see from the title, Extraterrestrial Religion is the topic, and you guys are writing a book on this subject. So let's not even waste any time. Super chats, we're going to get to them in a couple after we get through this little tiny presentation, and then we'll get to them shortly. So you can start submitting those. That would be great. But let's talk about this book and let's get into this idea of aliens. What happens if we ever contact aliens? What happens to religion? Right? Because this is the only world that matters. If this is the chosen world, this is the chosen region, this is the chosen people, whatever, what happens? We're just a little speck on a little rock in a little next to a little light, and you keep zooming out and you're in the middle and it's nothing. We're not even, it's like we're not even existing compared to the rest of the universe. But we're not even
and
there.
you are actually stepping in right to the beginning of what we write on with something that is well known as the Copernican principle, that all things being equal, you should assume that you are basically somewhere in the middle of the road, that you're not special. And the idea, of course, coming from when we realized, hey, the universe literally doesn't revolve around us. We're just a speck around one medium-sized star, which is one of 100+ billion stars in just one galaxy, which is one of about 100 billion in the observable universe, which may itself, in the not so observable parts, go on forever. And so it's like, yeah, we're that tiny, tiny little thing there. How do we fit into that? And is there anybody else out there that also has to fit into the universe that we've woken up and seen?
Yeah, so then the name of our book is Aliens and Religion, Where Two Worlds Collide. Subtitle, Assessing the Impact of Discovering Extraterrestrial Life on Religion and Theology. So what we're really looking to do is answer the question, is the belief in God more or less likely given the discovery of what we call ETI? So ETI is, we'll use that for aliens, intelligent aliens, right? So if we discovered that there are intelligent alien life, or even if we conclude that the probability is very much in favor of believing that there are huge amounts of alien life, or at least some intelligent alien life out there, is the belief in the Christian God, for example, but we will be talking about other gods in the book, is that more or less likely? And that's kind of what we're going to go for. And if the answer is that actually belief in God is less likely given ETI, then, well, actually the first part of the book is, well, what's the probability that there are ETI out there? And that's Aaron's, that's his expertise, and I will defer to him.
Wow. So yeah, whoever wants to start getting into this, like, what have you, so without giving away too much of the book, you've been thinking about this obviously a lot for you to write this book. So some of this stuff that you've sort of established in your mind about what this would mean, can you give us a little bit of a little bit of that?
I'll hop in a little bit. First off, what even generated us wanting to write this? John in particular had come across this paper from, it was Philosophica Christia. Was that right? Yeah. So it was a couple of Christian philosopher theologians who were writing a recent paper and saying, we think from a Christian point of view, there's no issue with extraterrestrials existing. In fact, we think it's slightly more expected on theism than non-theism or atheism. And they also try to say, and all the problems that you might think of about incarnation or Christian tradition or things like that, there's no actual problem. There's no real conflicts to be found. And ultimately, we found some of the arguments to be wanting. Some of the statements in there, just kind of drove me up the wall because in particular, when they were making statements about what they find in both science and science fiction, I'm just like, guys, you need to read more widely. I'm going to have to teach you a few lessons about not just the probability of aliens, but what's in the oeuvre of Arthur C. Clarke that you need to be worrying about. So this ultimately led to some really fun things investigating of everything from, what does the science actually indicate for how likely there's anybody to visit us in our own galaxy or the universe at large, how much theological impact there would be. And we can address this both scientifically, mathematically, and with philosophical argumentation. So we've been having some fun, getting the words out, but also there will be some equations.
Yeah, so the paper, McIntosh and McNabb's paper, I think it's 2021, so it is a recent paper. There is a whole discipline, and your viewers might not realize this, but there is a whole discipline and plenty of books written. The discipline is astrotheology. So there are loads of theologians who do spend, like Ted Peters, actually really interesting theologian who spent, he writes books on astrotheology. That's his thing. And he's collected an anthology of lots of people writing on the topic. So this is an area that has got a surprising amount of, big thinkers doing a lot of thinking about it. We take McIntosh and McNabb's paper, which is called Houston, Do We Have a Problem? I think is the main name of the paper. And they split the problem, or the potential problems, into 6 areas. So challenging theism. So does ETI discovery challenge the notion of theism in general? Challenging Christian scriptures, challenging Christian doctrines, challenging tradition, the problem of evil, and narrative, Christian tradition and narrative. So those are the 6 areas that we structure the book around before we look at other religions. But as Aaron was hinting at, the first part of the book is, okay, well, what's the probability that alien life is out there, intelligent alien life? What's the probability it's out there, but it can't contact us, that it can contact us? What would it look like? And so on and so forth. So there's an awful lot of science and maths, and that's where, or I have to call it math because we're writing this in American English, which is wrong, but there you go. And Aaron does a lot of number crunching. In fact, he's done some original number crunching in this as well. So that's pretty exciting. And I will defer you now to Aaron to talk you through all that.
Yeah, I was actually a little bit of background for myself. So when it comes to actually like trying to find civilizations, that's actually something that I used to do as part of my college training. I was spent like one summer off at the SETI Institute to search for extraterrestrial intelligence, got to use their radio telescopes up in Northern California, and doing, normal signs, but also sending the signal through a bank of computers looking for any sign that, hey, there's a radio signal out there from somebody trying to say hi, or perform the alien version of the Nigerian prince scam. We can't tell which yet, because so far we have not yet detected intelligence or technology from outside Earth. All the UFO claims aside, we can get to that later potentially. But the thing is, we haven't yet, made a direct discovery of an extraterrestrial intelligence. We're looking for it. How likely is it actually out there, given what we know, and also given the fact that we have been looking and we haven't found anybody yet? So I've looked at the various proposals to try to explain, hey, there's like 400, 500 billion stars in this galaxy. It seems impossible that there's nobody else out there, and yet we go looking and everything's quiet.
Wow.
What's the explanation for that? And this is something known as the Fermi paradox, because it was originally formulated by the great physicist Enrico Fermi, when he basically was at a luncheon with some of his other physics colleagues and basically blurted out, "Where is everybody?"
Now,
and yeah,
that is fascinating. Now, there's another, I think it's a rebuttal to that, or maybe this is a rebuttal to it, but there's something called the Drake equation that actually gives us the idea that there should be life out there, right?
So specifically what the Drake equation does, first off, it's named after Frank Drake, who literally just died last week at the age of, I think, 91.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, literally, I mean, he's now been gone a little bit longer than the Queen of England. Sorry, John.
A lot of important people dying this week.
Yeah.
Cheers to good old Liz.
Very well. So, but nonetheless, what Frank Drake's equation was basically a way of putting in mathematical form the factors that would go into trying to guesstimate how many actively transmitting civilizations there are in the Milky Way galaxy right now. And it has factors like what's the rate of star formation, what fraction of stars have planets, what fraction of those planets can actually have life, what fractions of those habitable planets actually have life emerge, what fraction of those life-bearing planets actually create intelligent life, what fraction of those living intelligent planets actually build communication systems, and how long do they actually stick around? What's the lifetime of such a civilization? Those factors go in, and then try to say, here's the number N civilizations that are out there.
We don't know. There's so many unknowns. In fact, most of them are unknowns. We can give ranges, and by point of fact that we can give ranges to some of these figures, we can then come out with an eventual range. Now, the problem is certain different people have come out with very differing ranges, and so, you know, garbage in, garbage out. But it's a starting point in order for us to try and make some kind of headway into answering the question: is there intelligent life out there?
Well, listen, I got something to. I'm just going to rebuttal everything you just said, because Mr. Ralph Ellis, you know, the honorable, the Sir, what is it, the Sir or whatever, Sir Ralph Ellis, has sent me his books. Now he thought that he's going to send me his. He thought, because I was criticizing his theories, that by sending me all his books, that I was going to read them all and be like, "Whoa, dude, you're onto something here! Oh my god!" But actually, it was quite the opposite. But he did say on the back of the Grail cipher, right on the back here, I don't know if how, maybe I can show you guys so you can see it. Can you see that?
It's okay. We could barely take it.
There are words.
And
third from the bottom. The Holy Grail was brought to Earth by aliens.
Well, there you go. Job done.
There you go. If Ralph said it, it's true.
We need to rewrite most of it.
If aliens already came here, then whatever, guys. We don't even need to write this book anymore. It's over with.
Well, at least the first chapter is no longer needed, because, like, yep, aliens exist. Then we can just jump to the rest. Now, on the other hand, if you maybe don't find anything Ralph says to be even worth discussing, which is what I would say is the correct view, and by correct, I mean objectively given. The first chapter going through the issues of why haven't we actually found ET? Are they actually actively hiding from us? And of course, if they were, how successful would they be? Are there other reasons to think that we're actually the first civilization in the universe to pop up? Or is it that just life is so stupidly improbable that we really, really could be alone? And how do we actually take into account our ignorance of the various factors that go into the Drake equation? Because, like you said, garbage in, garbage out. Different people will take that equation and say there's anything from 10 million civilizations in this galaxy right now to 0. That's one hell of a range from we are alone to we should be bumping into them every 5 minutes.
So, and I think
that's a good point.
There's an awful lot of time we could spend, sort of, you know, giving you the equations and doing the calculations. But I suppose it's probably more efficient for us to give the broad conclusions. However, there is some interesting game theory involved in the discovery of alien life, which I think, Aaron, do you want to express that? Because I think that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, so this is actually an interesting idea that comes, from what I can tell, first from science fiction, from a Chinese science fiction author by the name of Xin Liu, wrote a series of books that are grouped together called The Three Body Problem. And the book, especially the second book in this series, comes up with the idea of astrosociology, and the ideas of you have civilizations out there, they want to survive, they want to grow and take out, you know, threats. Well, you also realize if there are other civilizations out there, more likely than not, some of them are going to be more advanced than you, perhaps way more advanced than you. So you are kind of incentivized to say, hey, if they came here, they would, you know, completely wipe us out. In which case, your best solution is to try to hide. But if all the other civilizations are making the same choice, then everyone's trying to hide from each other, and that's why the universe is quiet. There could be thousands of civilizations out there, but they're all afraid to peep up because whoever, you know, sticks their head above the grass could be the one shot down by the other civilization that can't accept any threats.
Remember, the Copernican principle, or the principle of mediocrity, says that if there are other civilizations out there, we are most likely to be in the kind of average. You know, maybe it's a bell curve, and we'll just be slap in the middle of that. And so therefore you're thinking, right, if there are these more powerful and more intelligent civilizations, then if we are going out like SETI, some people argue that SETI is a really bad idea, that we shouldn't be searching for using exactly this theory, that we shouldn't be searching for intelligent extraterrestrial life because we're just inviting doom upon ourselves. But then, you know, it depends how far up the pecking ladder of you know, technological advancement you are. If you're confident that you are the number one, you know, alpha species out there, then you want to be taking out these lowly threats. So there's a lot of game theory that goes into this idea.
Yeah, I ultimately, try to conclude that there's reasons that we shouldn't accept the conclusions from the novel series, but I will still strongly recommend that everyone reads it. It's some of the best science fiction of the last 10 or 15 years. And the ideas are extremely thought-provoking. And like I say, I had to deal with it seriously because the other idea that like all the civilizations out there have their own prime directive, and I hope you guys are noticing my background because today is Star Trek Day. The idea of the prime directive that you don't interfere in lesser civilizations and let them evolve naturally. The problem with that is how do you get everyone to agree to not interfere? And with something I like to call the teenager problem. You tell a teenager not to do something, what do? They're more likely to do it. How do you keep the the kids out of the lion cage? It's like, no, you tell them to stay out of there. Now they really want to go and play with the lions. Even if it is stupid, somebody's going to do it. So in which case, why aren't there like drunk teenagers having their benders here on Earth, revealing themselves? Just because if there's billions out there, the chances that a billion individuals out there all perfectly conform to some law is very implausible.
So, although given it's a huge part of our book, I suppose the conclusions would be broadly that the universe is so vast, and it would be rather Earth chauvinistic to think that life would only start on one particular planet and evolve into something intelligent. That intelligent life must be out there, and given the vastness of the universe or the potential infiniteness of the universe, then there's probably, or possibly, or I don't know, I would say almost certainly billions of intelligent, perhaps infinite numbers of intelligent life forms out there, VTIs. And if that's essentially where we are as far as a conclusion, then what then follows? So the book is the first part is all about establishing that, as far as probability assessment goes, as far as doing the maths and science and so on and so forth. And then it's like, right, now we're here. What do we do with that? Is that fair enough, Aaron?
Yeah, I think that's very good. Yeah. And if there's other details about the science or the alleged claims that we've already made contact with the aliens in our past or present, we can take super chats related to that. But we're going to spend probably most of our time on the theological implications.
Yeah. Do you want to do the super chats, and then maybe we can touch up on whatever doesn't get covered through the questions? That way, somebody who asks a question doesn't get like, oh, you already answered it. Like, at least they don't get a waste. So the first one looks like, I thought this was Derek at first, but this looks like some sort of imposter channel.
I thought it was Derek.
I did.
I am the land that will descend on.
That's his Twitter handle face. So he must have just copied it on Twitter or something.
Derek, the land son of Yahweh. I am the land that will descend.
I took a screenshot and sent it to Derek, and he goes, "That's not even me." You join now. Okay.
Well, serious? They still pay $10, so we should answer their question.
Yeah. So, what do you guys think about that backside? Does Aaron know why Jehovah only showed his backside?
Yeah, I have a theory for that. So, remember in the prophecies of Zechariah that God's Holy One would enter Jerusalem riding on a donkey. I think that proves that the Holy One of God is an ass man.
Oh wow.
Such a bad joke.
That's like you expected better.
Do you know how difficult it is working with Aaron on this book? It's like,
you ever seen that show on Adult Swim where Ass McGee or whatever? He's just a guy with an ass up for his face.
There was an episode of South Park with a family like that. I don't remember anything else.
Oh yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I can find an image of him. Oh, I just found it. Yeah.
Oh.
It's not that. It's not like a real bad. It's just a cartoon, so it's not like.
Yeah.
I gotta show it now. People are probably like, "What is he talking about?" Just so you guys know, I'm not just making shit up. Here it is. Hold on a second. He's a cop too. He's Ass McGee. He's a crime fighting cop.
Quality.
Man,
gotta love Adult.
What an asshole.
Gotta love Adult Swim. They gave us Primal. That's a great show too. But anyways, let's go to the next one. The next one is from Augusto Memekit. My girlfriend and I have a running theory that a lot of historical figures are ET hybrids or genetic experiments to accelerate human evolution. Jesus, Newton, Archimedes, Buddha, Da Vinci, etc.
As ever, with any claim like this, it's like, okay, what's a solid evidence? You know, but also, I would say it's hugely unlikely that that would be the case as well, due to a whole load of things.
All I want to know is where you get your weed from, dude.
Not least. I mean, part of the problem, I always say that the reason I say intelligent life exists out there, but we're never going to come across it because we are quarantined by distance, is the way I term it. So the idea is that the distances are so vast between civilizations that you would have to travel at the speed of light in order to achieve communication, and that's, you know, ostensibly impossible. Now, what sci-fi does is invents ways around that, wormholes and hyperspace travel and all these kind of things. But you know, until we've got a workable way of traveling at the speed of light, then that is just a huge problem. So I don't, Aaron, what do you have to say to that?
Yeah, and we should also throw in the genetic problem. The idea that the aliens could come and hybridize with us is pretty much genetically impossible because, well, let's put it this way. We have a closer common ancestor with a coconut tree than with any extraterrestrial. So the chances of copulating with an alien and having offspring is less likely than you copulating with a coconut and having babies.
You know what I just thought about?
So I've crossed that off my bucket list then.
I've heard from, like, watching documentaries. I'm no expert, not even close. I'm just throwing darts at you right now to see what you think. But I remember hearing that, you know, abiogenesis is a result of like millions of years of like asteroids hitting the Earth and like certain compounds mixing with other certain compounds underwater and nuclear shit happen. Oh, whatever, blah blah blah. It's a big formula happening, right? Well, what if some of those asteroids that are hitting Earth come from that place and they are related to us?
So that's actually, the hypothesis known as panspermia, of which there's various forms, indirected where, there's just random life stuff floating around the galaxy, and that's how life spreads around, versus directed panspermia, the aliens come and actually start life on Earth like they did like in the movie Prometheus, things like that. Panspermia is not impossible, but right now it is not evidently true. And of course, it just says, well, how did life emerge? Well, it started someplace else. How did it start there? You don't really gain that much necessarily.
You're just chasing the next question. That's what.
But it is worth noting that there are actually important biological compounds that we see actually in space. Like we look into molecular clouds, and we can actually see with our telescopes, there's actually amino acids in outer space, the building blocks of DNA and RNA. So, you know, that living stuff is still out there and might be floating around, and that's how it got here, is not impossible. It's just that we don't have anything that makes that conclusively true.
Invited the Lamb of God.
Yeah, Derek, what do you think about this guy?
Dude. Okay, so I don't know who that is. I think it's funny. It's pretty cool. Derek the Lamb, son of Yahweh. You know, it makes me think. I don't know. People already are calling me a Jew lover, so whatever. I love, you know, like I'm getting a lot of people who are coming at me in the chat, and I'm like,
I've been getting a lot of that lately too.
Yeah, what's going on out there? I don't understand. But
you know, you've won life, Derek, when people are impersonating you like this. I mean, I would take that as just like, thank you, I've won.
Yeah, and you know what's something funny about these people who are like, they had their theories about how religion, how Christianity came about. I think there's a big conspiracy or whatever. And then I have someone on my show, Rabbi Tobias Singer, and I'm my guest, and they're throwing super chats at me, trying to like interrogate the man. Do you have a secret plan to turn everybody into no-hide laws?
Yeah,
get him. It's like, guys, you are sick in the head. Like, what are you doing right now?
Unless by Noahide law they mean like don't kill each other. I think we could get on board with that one.
I just don't understand why you're so. What is it that makes you so upset about this? You're making videos about a super chat that you sent me. You didn't like the answer that you got. You sent me a super chat. He even says in the video, I knew the answer. I was just testing them. Okay, then why did you even ask us then?
Well, it's to try and get, it's trying to get Rabbi or somebody else to lie and
drive-by anti-Semitism. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm not having a part in that shit.
But no. I don't even know if that was what the super chat in my name even was bringing up. But it is kind of like something that will go. See, we knew that you were a son of Yahweh. You're a supporter of, and it's like, dude, I literally dismantle this stuff like on my channel every day. You're just pissed off that I don't spend 24/7 dealing with rabbinic Zohar Talmud, Mishnah,
Kabbalah. Yeah.
like Kabbalah. And it's like, when's the last time a rabbi beheaded a Gentile who's resistant to his Noahide? Oh, it can happen. It's anyway.
No.
Yeah.
So
maybe during the Maccabees.
here's a segue actually in what you're saying. So there's a thing that we do in the book, something called the problem of particularity, and this is something that can be seen in two different ways. One is that Jesus is the only way to salvation. Like the only way you can get this is the traditional problem of particularity. But there's another version of it, which is that there are all these particular things about Judaism or belief or the right belief or Christianity even that are so particular to a time and place, then it's almost exclusive to outsiders or it's not particularly universal. And both of these are quite interesting ideas when you're considering how do intelligent alien life forms reach the correct belief? Is there only this one belief? Is there only this one incarnation, which is Jesus as the Messiah figure, carpenter from Nazareth, or is there a more universal form of this, or does this happen all over the universe in different ways? And then you look at things like the Jewish laws. Take something like circumcision. How universal is that? So a lot of Christians will kind of do away with that in the kind of intertestamental moral relativism to say, well, actually, do you know what? The New Testament has done away with the Old Testament or whatever. But the idea is you get these moral proclamations in the Bible, which are simply impossible to make sense of outside of the Earth context. So you're going to have aliens that don't have penises, that might not have biological sex in the same way that we do on Earth. And so therefore, what does this mean to them? How are these universal moral proclamations?
They're animals. They're NPCs. They're not chosen. That's what they'll say. But you know what? The whole circumcision thing is kind of funny because it's like, why don't we just create people that way? Did God make a mistake there? Is something going on with, like, you know what I mean? It's like, but yeah, but to your point though, how does this relate to the entire universe? It shows that this is literally set and focused on just this Earth and just this world, as if they did not know that there was a universe outside. That's what it shows.
Or if they did, it was like I'm sure Aaron's already probably said this, and I'm late to the party, but it's just looking at the celestial bodies as far as they can go, and they're like, oh, those are deities, or those are angels, or whatever you might want to try to say, without any obvious fact of what they really are.
The Greeks thought that the Milky Way was Hera's milk, that she was breastfeeding. I forgot what god it was. One of the sons of Jupiter was a baby. She was breastfeeding and somebody like pushed her or something, and the milk splashed all over the heavens. And now when you look up, that's where you get the Milky Way from now. Like, yeah,
exactly. In fact, our word galaxy comes from the word for milk, which is what Hera spilled across the sky.
That's so crazy.
Zeus and his golden showers and all sorts. Yeah,
I was thinking Zeus, masturbated and then something, But anyway, whatever. Could be either or.
This is a really good question. This is thank you for the super chat, Ketcha. What happens to Jesus if aliens are real?
So this is basically the largest chapter in the book is where we deal with doctrine. So, I mean, we're kind of going all over the place at the moment, but there is a structure to this. So, as I said, we look at challenging theism in general, challenging the scriptures, and then the third one along there is challenging doctrine. Now the idea is, okay, are aliens intelligent? Yes. Okay, let's use a principle of mediocrity in the Copernican principle to say, yes, if they're out there, they're going to be intelligent and probably a lot more intelligent than us in certain places. Okay, 2, are they moral? Well, I think if they're going to be intelligent, then they're probably going to be moral as well. I think it's a given that intelligent alien life is going to be moral. Okay, if they're moral, are they fallen? And this is where we get into interesting questions. And actually, C.S. Lewis wrote a trilogy, a sci-fi trilogy, where there was a planet where people were not fallen, and then we went and sort of visited them. I believe the Cosmic Trilogy. I mean, Aaron, you can tell us probably a little.
Now
bit
they're fallen because of us.
They basically saw we were messed up, so they kicked us out. And by the way, the planets were Mars and Venus. So it was when C.S. Lewis was writing in the 30s. we knew at that point that Mars was definitely not inhabited, but still, so much science fiction had happened there. It was basically like he's going to take the trappings of science fiction at that time to then make it more Christian-y.
Right.
So then the idea is, okay, let's assume that all these intelligent alien life forms we're thinking about are fallen. Then what do we do with that? So the first question is atonement, right? Does that make sense? Well, I mean, this is what Derek will know this because we did this in the Resurrection series, which is, okay, the resurrection is based on atonement making sense. The atonement doesn't make sense.
No.
So here's a problem, which isn't
Neil's
necessarily
doing something on that right now, by the way. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but so we can talk about aliens, but actually, atonement doesn't make sense. And the fact that theologians still disagree on which theory is the best theory, when actually none of them really particularly make any sense. And then it also depends on the Holy Trinity as well making sense. Now that's an incoherent thing. So you've got real problems before you even get off the ground. But assuming that you can find some sense in the atonement and the Holy Trinity, then you say, right, what's the best way of saving humanity? Well, it's incarnating Jesus, incarnating God into human form as Jesus, and then Jesus being sacrificed and killed, and that somehow atones for the sins of humanity. And that is our path to redemption, and that's soteriology going on there. Okay, so then the question is that going to be what's happening in all these ETI instances? And you start getting onto bits of philosophy, which is, well, if this is the best way of doing it, so if God is omnigod, which is the all-loving, all-knowing, all-powerful God, then he would choose optimally at any given time, which must show surely that the atonement and the incarnation are the optimal way of reaching redemption. And it would be unfair for us to get the optimal way and for other ETIs not to get the optimal way. So it looks like, and this is where we do lots of debate. So there's loads of shortcuts going on here. There's loads of debate about this, but it looks like, in my opinion, there would be heaps of incarnations, possibly billions of Jesuses existing in alien form in every instance of intelligent moral life in the universe. That's a lot of me talking. Aaron, take over.
Yeah. And it is worth noting that, like, our best guesses is that, yeah, there are definitely civilizations out there, and it's even very plausible that there are multiple civilizations all existing at the same time. So if Jesus does need to make a personal redemption for aliens and has to go to each one of them, he might have to actually be on two worlds at the exact same time, getting himself, beamed up. So he might be having 2 bad weekends in one weekend. Just because with the 100 billion galaxies out there, there's going to be some crossover. There's going to be some aliens in the same time period that are both needing salvation at about the same instant.
Which is to say that there are potentially billions of Jesuses existing simultaneously. So then you have the problem of how does you come across theory of mind problems, which is how does Jesus? Yes, there's omnipresence, but that's like a one mind being present everywhere. How do you split a mind into a million different billion different instances where that mind is independent? And thinking independently, yet not independent. So this just creates a whole load of problems. But theologians are actually split on this issue as to whether there is one incarnation that does it all, the kind of earth chauvinistic incarnation theory. And actually, Ted Peters, who I mentioned before, is a single incarnation theologian. Or are there billions of incarnations in alien form?
But if that's the case, if he's omnipresent on all these different planets at the same time, then like the whole idea of him being like a sacrificial lamb, does that thing change on another planet where there's no lambs? There's like some animal T or animal X, and like he becomes symbolically the blood of that thing. And then it gets, if this is so grand, this is such a grand thing, then it no longer becomes sacrifice, because when you sacrifice something, you give it up forever. In the case of Jesus, he just knows what's going to happen. He's the eternal logos. He's been there from the beginning. He's always been with the Father. He dies for 3 days, goes down to hell, preaches to the people down in hell. They all get saved. He goes up to the right hand of the Father, and now he judges the dead. What did he sacrifice?
No, he didn't sacrifice anything. He gained. No. If you read the Philippians hymn, it says that he's exalted beyond what he already was. He gained something from it. He didn't lose anything. And also, you guys, you didn't tell everybody that we are aliens, right? You guys kept that on the hush hush.
I'm gonna take off that mask now. I'm just kidding.
No. We're not live, are we?
Oh shit.
Oh my god.
Oh, I thought this was pre-recorded. My bad, guys.
Help me get over this. I don't want them to know what the hell's going on. We gotta play this one off. You guys can only hear me.
You have just attained true gnosis.
Neil, we were joking about that.
Neil nails a point though, which is that there is the idea that the single incarnation gives this great glory, this amazing piece of narrative that just bespeaks glory. If you're then doing that a billion times, trillion to infinite times around the universe, then actually you're devaluing the notion. And what we end up doing is we agree with all the criticisms that multiple incarnation people have against single incarnation. And we agree with all the criticisms that single incarnation people have of the multiple incarnation people. So we're like almost on the sideline eating popcorn.
Yeah.
Because actually there are heaps of problems with the single incarnation, heaps of problems with the multiple incarnation.
Yeah. Yep. In fact, we actually even came up with some new ones, which are also show issues with the multi-incarnation one. Like if Jesus has to get himself killed over and over and over again, can you really say he conquers death if he has to do a new conquest every week and has to get himself killed over and over again? Paul was pretty explicit that it was a one-time event.
He's performing. It's a show. It's
right. And if you take William Lane Craig's logic, right, then technically the aliens who never got the message, well, God foreknew that they would reject it even if they did hear it. So they were doomed for hell anyway, because, well, he knows that if they would have heard it, they would have freely chose not to believe it anyway. And then screw those aliens, you know.
Why even create them then? Why? What's the point?
Yeah.
But Keisha's got a good question. I like the super chat. I appreciate the support, of course, always for people who help. But it is a good question that can go anywhere, right? Like you can have fun. Because I think what would happen if we really did come across some intelligent life that we know, like, holy crap, they're intelligent. They're not just, some lower life forms. I imagine cognitive dissonance would be a son of a gun for many of them.
We have a chapter on cognitive dissonance, and in fact, that will feature largely in the conclusion as well.
Gotta get their book.
Part of what we talk about in the first half is how will people psychologically react to the discovery of ETI if we do, and how will religion psychologically react? And actually, Ted Peters did some research some time back, a good few years ago, that suggests that actually religious people wouldn't be that bothered. But then there is differing. There are differing pieces of evidence. So it turns out that, I think if the more religious and the more fundamental people are, the more they will struggle. And so we talk a lot about the psychological data and what the impact will be politically and socially, to then also talk about cognitive dissonance and how people reduce a cognitive dissonance. And actually that's probably what would happen in practicality.
Guys, we also have to mention very quickly that original cognitive dissonance religion or cognitive dissonance research was on a UFO cult.
Oh, that's a good. Okay, this brings me to another UFO movie, right? Or at least an alien movie. Have you guys seen this? I'm sharing my screen, Neil.
Sure.
Okay, have you guys seen the Prometheus movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
You remember the scene when they're finally like coming across these aliens and eggs and whatnot, and it seems like there's a reference in this movie. I don't know if you recall. I'm not going to hit play because I'm not going to like ding you or anything. But there's a reference in this Prometheus movie where Jesus is referenced as an alien who went to this planet Earth.
Yeah.
Do you remember that in this movie?
Of course, yeah.
I didn't remember that.
You need to watch the movie again.
Yeah.
There is a Easter egg where Jesus is actually sent to this place called Earth, and those Earthlings killed him. And like they have like retrieved his bones or so. I can't remember. It's a really interesting science fiction approach, but because it's real, don't tell everybody.
What about the paintings from the medieval ages that supposedly have aliens? I mean, you guys know about this? You guys should put this in the book.
I think I know what you're referring to because they've showed it on the
Ancient
History Channel.
Yeah, History Channel, right? Whatever that
Real
is.
Facts. The Real Facts Channel.
It's the Ralph Ellis Network. Look at this.
Yep. Yeah, so I know what that is because if you actually look at more than one painting in Renaissance or early or late medieval art, you actually find that sort of thing in multiple places, and it's more clearly drawn. It's literally the heavens opening up and it's full of angels. So the reason it's glowing, it's heavenly glory. It's not a spaceship. Not to mention, it's not an effing picture.
And this one right here, it's not a photograph, it's a painting. This one right here, that shows the star of Venus on there. That's literally showing you this is.
Of course, that's astronauts. Of course, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
and
fun.
the same sort of way, when we say there's a man on the moon, we think that the moon is a giant human, and occasionally it comes down and crashes on Earth unless you can travel back in time and get all the right doku nuts so you can have the giants hold. I'm sorry, I got Majora's Mask mixed up with reality again.
I was just thinking about Halloween. I don't know how factual this is, but I did hear a lecture by a guy who mentioned something about the idea of witches flying a broomstick across the sky kind of thing may have its legends built into asteroid or comets having the tail when they enter our atmosphere. There's like a tail traveling behind it. So there's lore attached to magic, of course. Makes me think, okay, maybe people would think, oh, astronauts or whatever. But no, like it's common phenomena that or maybe not as common, but it happens. And we don't know how to explain it in the ancient world. So we give it to gods or angels.
I mean, this is classic.
You point out the UFO in this one. I can see it. Yeah.
On the left and right, yes.
Yeah.
The sun and the moon.
Obvious, yeah, right. That's what you think of it. But
yeah. But really, it's hidden aliens, and it's so hidden because why are we hiding this again?
Right.
Why are we hiding this? We don't want them to know what's really going on. That's why we're secretly not wanting them to know who we really are. You know what I mean?
This is a good point. Okay, so another bit of a segue here, which is one of the chapters that we deal with. The 6 issues that McIntosh and McNabb point out is Christian scriptures, right? So the idea is, what do the Christian scriptures say about intelligent alien life existing? And the idea is that actually they don't say anything. So there are several things that go on here. So the question for us is, well, if God knows that intelligent alien life exists plentifully around the universe, would we expect God to say something about it? And if we would expect God to say something, but this is the argument from silence, right? We can talk about this with Paul and the resurrection and the empty tomb. You know, if Paul knew about those things, then surely we would expect him to say those things, but he doesn't say those things. So actually, this is a valid argument from silence. So that's a real problem. So in the case of aliens, like if God doesn't say anything in the Bible and makes no mention or no, inference to these things existing, and we would expect that, then that's a problem. So the question is, would we expect the Bible to say anything about aliens, or is it actually just irrelevant for what the intentions of the Bible are? And then Christians then say, so they say, oh, it's not a problem because the Bible doesn't mention it. But then Christians also say, but then look at this quote from Paul. It's really universal and it can refer to aliens. And you're like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say on the one hand, the Bible makes no reference to aliens. And on the other hand, it makes really universal references which cover aliens as well. And that's something that Aaron pointed out in the book. And,
Yeah, and when you dive into the actual cosmology of, especially the Old, but the New Testament as well, it seems to go out of its way to exclude the possibility of aliens in the heavens. It's basically trying to indicate the only creatures exist here.
There's gates up there that hold the waters back. There's 4 pillars. It's basically a flat Earth cosmology, and this is all there is. This is all there is. There's nothing outside of this. I mean, that's Jesus for you.
Yeah, and basically you don't have people really actively saying there are intelligences in the heavens until basically Copernicus writes his book, and then in the early depictions of the Copernican system, then saying the idea the universe is actually infinite size and the stars are very far away and potentially have their own planets. Though that is also an idea from the philosopher Epicurus. We have actually in one of his letters.
I was going to say,
yeah, he says there's a plurality of worlds because they form, randomly because of atoms bumping into each other. So all those stars out there are like our sun, which can have their own planets with their own people. So there was already that concept of extraterrestrials amongst Greek philosophers.
But Aristotle rejected that, I think, right? If I'm not mistaken.
He did. Well, because the Epicureans depended on atomism, and Aristotle thought he refuted atomism, that he wouldn't accept those conclusions.
Wow.
I saw a comment from somebody, I don't know if you guys saw it, where they said the star over Jesus, which you wrote an entire book about, Aaron, is like evidence of the spaceship coming and dropping off, Jesus. And I literally went to pull this joker up here. Yes, you go ahead.
Hold on. Let me do his first.
Shameless plug first for Aaron. If you haven't,
plug.
Dude, you literally got to get it's not expensive and it's not an enormous read. You must read these works. I'm telling you, especially.
Oh, it's in the description. It's in the description, guys.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Get a copy of Aaron Adair's book, The Star of Bethlehem, A Skeptical View. He's engaging very sophisticatedly with other views of trying to make the Star of Bethlehem a real thing. Including all you got to do, say that again?
Including aliens. I discussed the UFO hypothesis.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Well, I got to be thorough. And of the naturalistic theories for the Star of Bethlehem, it's the only one that actually can fit the data. So it's a better hypothesis than comets or meteors or supernova. But of course, it has its own problems, such as why are aliens flying around, zipping around, and just trying to mess with Palestinians?
The question why always defeats theology. Why?
That's how important.
Whenever you have these alien abduction stories, right? Like some drunk guy being picked up from a forest and getting his ass probed.
Yes, and these are real. You're not being funny. This is for real.
But the question is always, why would they come all that distance, all that technology, and all that time to develop that, go across the universe to find some drunk bloke and then wonder what's going on inside his backside? It's just like, that's just nonsense. It's obviously nonsense. So,
and we should probably put into perspective how hard it is to travel among the stars. That's probably worth pointing out, because suppose, Derek, you wanted to visit the nearest habitable planet that we are aware of. And we actually know there is a planet in the habitable zone at the nearest star to our solar system, Proxima Centauri. So you want to hop on a spaceship and go, right? If we put you on the fastest thing we have ever launched into deep space, like the Voyager probes, it would take you something between 70 and 80,000 years to get there. Now, if you want to get there in, let's say, a human lifetime, you're going to probably have to go an appreciable fraction the speed of light, because the nearest star to our solar system, Proxima Centauri, is more than 4 light years away. At the speed of light, an Earthling would say it would take you more than 4 years to get there. And that's if you were going the cosmic speed limit, which we can't even get anywhere near that. To do that, you need a gargantuan amount of energy. And one of the things I do in the book is actually make some calculations for the energy needs to do that and how much energy a civilization would need to do that. So one of the calculations I did was, if aliens could actually get here at relativistic speeds, they would have to be at least 1 million times more powerful than we are.
Wow.
And why would they care about ants? I mean, we are literally ants compared to that kind of intelligence.
Or even more specifically, the holes of the butts of ants. Why would they put in all that energy just to say, yep, they're full of shit. Yep.
Dude, by the way, in case that person is convinced, and I get it. Jesus was dropped off by a UFO. So was in Suetonius, Lives of the Caesars, so was Claudius.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? So he was dropped off also, and there's a star at his birth. So, we get it. It's true.
This kind of stories are 10 a penny. Yeah. I guess the idea of, like, we talk about, or Aaron talks about in the book, about how the Bible gets cosmology wrong. So biblical cosmology is wrong. It's really, really wrong. Okay. And then if the Bible's not saying anything about, so it's not only getting stuff wrong for us, that really omni-God should be able to get right in the prime revelation to his chosen people. That's a problem. But then if it's also not saying anything about aliens when possibly it should say things about aliens, then there's a whole load of different types of deception going on here. And actually the paper, McIntosh and McNabb's paper, accepts deception as a thing, but they talk about it being justified, which of course, if you're going to justify deception, then you are actually talking about moral consequentialism, which is the idea that the consequences of given action are what define the moral value. And Christians don't really like moral consequentialism because you don't need a God for that. But that's how they justify deception, generally speaking. But here, if the Bible is getting cosmology wrong, A, that needs explaining. B, if we're in some sense being deceived either by that or by the idea that there is no alien life out there, meaningful alien life, then, you know, what's going on? What does it say if God is knowingly deceiving us? You know, so that's
yeah. Doesn't make any sense.
What's more likely, God's knowingly deceiving us, or humans who think that this is the case? Well, you know what? God's deceiving us, actually. That makes better sense, actually. So, yeah, no, I'll go with that one.
Yeah.
Humans didn't do this, you know?
Augusto Memochet. What are the UAPs the U.S. government has admitted to? And I know the copulation might not be possible, but DNA splicing, etc.
Since this relates to, I think, Augusto's previous one, let's answer the second part first.
Okay.
So I was pointing out that our chances of copulating with aliens are basically 0. So if you want to have alien babies, it's just not going to happen. It's not like in Star Trek where a Vulcan and a human can make a Spock. That will basically never happen.
Unless we figure out some genetic, like... I don't even know. I can't even picture, but you know what I'm saying.
Well,
like you
so I mean, that's what Augusto's questions is about. Like, what if, you know, they artificially splice the DNAs together? Yeah. But here's the thing: we don't even know if aliens would have DNA.
Right.
That's an open question. If DNA is a necessity for complex life or not, we don't honestly know that answer. And again, there's still, of course, the issue: how would we make that evident? And I was just thinking, suppose Einstein was some sort of alien-human hybrid. Einstein had children. And in that case, whatever genetic tweaks he got would also be inherited by his children. And we could actually then genetically see, hey, here's where the aliens come in and added this to the human haploid group XYZ or whatever. So you would think if there are alien encounters and they're, you know, putting stuff into the genetic pool, we would see all of a sudden this mutation just pop out and go everywhere.
And we do discuss the different types of alien life that could potentially be, including mechanistic life as well. So
yeah, that's also the possibility. I think more likely than not, if we do actually encounter alien technology, it will be in electromechanical form before it's biological, because it's a whole lot easier to send out a probe than a person.
It's a good point. Very good point.
But as for the UAPs, so because not everyone may not be up to this, UAP is the new acronym for UFO. So UFOs for unidentified flying objects, because that now has the reputations of butt probing aliens and all that. If a pilot says to their commander, I saw a UFO, they feel like they're not going to be treated seriously. So the military has now been saying, instead, let's use the designation UAP for unidentified aerial phenomenon to be even more broad and not have that same connotation. So if a pilot driving an F-38 sees something weird, they don't feel like they can't tell their commanding officer without having to do like bunk duty or something, you know, embarrassing because of what
it's a good change of acronym, that, because actually UAP covers things that are so if you think UFO, you think a flying object because that's what it says, but actually UAPs, there can be glints in the sky that you think are a flying thing, but it's just a phenomenon of light and so on and so forth. And so therefore, you know, UAPs is a much greater, much better umbrella term, I think.
Yeah, it has some value, but I think if it's hoping to not attach itself to weirdness, that's going to die away pretty quickly because, well, it's bringing all the weirdos into it anyways. Now, it is true that the U.S. government has been showing more interest in UAPs. There's been congressional hearings. People have probably seen the videos that were first released to like the New York Times and places like that. The videos are real. They seem to show weirdness. But let's remember, first off, what does the U stand for in UAP? Unidentified. Therefore, you cannot say U equals A, as in unidentified does not mean aliens. It means we don't know. And more importantly, a lot of the reasons we don't know what they are is because in many cases, we don't have enough data to go on to figure out what it is. It's almost the case that a UFO has to be by definition at the edge of our knowledge, that we don't really know what it is, because if we could see it more clearly, we'd see, oh, it's an airplane. Oh, it's a cow. It's not an alien. Once it goes from U to I, from unidentified to identified, we identify it, and every time that happens, it becomes, oh, it's something completely explicable. I also want to note the videos that have been put out, because they're the things that we can most tangentially actually examine. It's not just personal testimony. It's the actual like physical evidence we can look at. The most useful analyses I've seen has been done by Mick West here on YouTube.
I love Mick. Yep.
Yeah. And also Edward Current as well. He's also done a few good videos as well for like simulating the setup, and basically comes up with very plausible explanations for what's going on in these things that doesn't resort to aliens. It resorts to, one, things we understand about, and two, actually explains the weirdness in the data more than aliens.
I think it's interesting because we have so little data, how every time humans get close to the edge of an idea, whether it's a text or whether it's, you know, someone lives near a forest, Bigfoot, or we don't know what that was. It's like anywhere there's unfalsifiability and mystery, there is going to be crankery, no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what. It's a human condition.
You guys remember the Mothman? No?
Yeah,
I don't remember much about it.
Well, the Mothman was in like Indiana or somewhere in the middle. They call them the flyover states. I think it's kind of mean, but whatever. Flyover states, I guess. Somewhere in the middle of America, somewhere. I don't know. I'm just guessing. There was
like Richard Gere and the Mothman Prophecy.
Yeah, they made a movie about it by Richard Gere. But anyways, before the movie, there was a bunch of people calling in and reporting to see a giant bird or black thing with red eyes flying in the sky, chasing after people. And then what happened was, like a year later, 2 years later, because they all started to it stopped happening. But then like a year or two later, the Silver Bridge collapsed and a bunch of people died on the bridge. And they were like, it was the Mothman, it was the Mothman. So like this idea of like people reporting seeing weird creatures in like the middle of a cornfield or something turned into this big thing of this big conspiracy. And they thought it was like Satan or the devil doing this. But like it just shows you how people can get like, and it's always through the lens of some sort of thing in their own life. Like they grew up, mostly people grew up Christian. So when they see a giant bird with the red eyes, they're like, it's Satan. You know,
because it is.
Yeah. By the way, when I watched this documentary, I couldn't help but to remember. I've told you guys this before, but when I was 21, 2011, I went to prison for a little bit. I was in the middle of New York State, upstate New York.
How many bodies did you catch again? We'll talk about that later.
But non-violent. Anyways, you guys know I'm recovering addict, but I've talked about that in other episodes. Anyway, but that's a whole other topic. But when I was up there, I remember seeing giant owls that were huge with like 5-foot wingspan. And I'm not kidding. When you see those for the first time, it's fucking crazy. And then when I'm watching this documentary, I couldn't help but think I think they probably saw something like that. You know what I mean? And then someone who hasn't seen it before, who grows up in a church 2 times a week, they're like, that's the devil.
So this super chat, UAPs, like, what do you think this is? Like you said about Mick, I'm not going to spend much time here. I know you want to get to the next super chat. Let's keep hitting those super chats. Everybody show support, get the books. But I like how Mick was talking about in one of them, there was no light, like it had no heat. And he's like, this looks like a balloon that's actually right over the hovering over the face of the ocean. And it had no heat. It looks like just a balloon that like literally is floating in the air. And like, ooh, what is that? Because they have such high technology now that the camera, he thought that there's like a built-in rotating, like there's a lot of stuff to factor in. And I don't even know if the pilots themselves know all of the mechanisms that go into the new cameras and everything that they're using. I don't know.
All the technology is both extremely complicated, extremely expensive, and a lot of the details of it are also, in many cases, classified. So even the pilots probably aren't even allowed to necessarily know all the details about how the mechanisms work.
By the way, this is a picture of the Mothman.
Damn, I'm convinced.
From when I hear these stories and like, there's a lot of people reporting the same thing, and it's all in the same area. It makes me think there was probably a giant fucking bird in that area. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. It's worth noting that there's also, like, with all the various strange claims out there, we also have to remember these are just the recent strange claims. If you go back at the strange claims from like the mid 20th century, the reason UFO people don't talk about them anymore is because they got debunked when we figured out what was going on.
Yeah.
And that seems to be just the history. Let me just give one example. It was a couple of police officers in their squad car were chasing a UFO through Ohio. And they were at times like traveling over 100 miles per hour. They were chasing down this thing for over an hour, and they were going all the way into Pennsylvania because they were tracking this thing. And our best deduction of what they were probably looking at, Venus. Because you can actually see like the path they took on the roads to go there, and then you look at the time of day that was and realize, oh, that bright light they were saying they were following or were trying to chase after, it was probably Venus.
That's the brightest star in the night, especially getting closer to the dawn, which is why they call it the morning star.
Yeah,
Venus is the only Venus, because it's a planet. It's so close to us, it sticks around when the sun starts to rise. While all the other stars fade away, Venus just chills right there, which is why the ancients called it the morning star.
yeah.
Which explain
and also us moderns are really bad at astronomy. As another anecdote, it was a few decades ago that there was a power outage in LA, and so all the lights go out. But then also a whole bunch of emergency calls start going in, not for the power, but saying there's something weird with the sky. Because for the first time, millions of people were seeing the Milky Way. With light pollution in the city like LA, you can't see almost anything in the night sky. But then all of a sudden, boom, there's this beautiful cloud stretching across.
It is, and I don't think people give enough. So if you haven't seen the Milky Way in its true glory, I remember in 1996 I was backpacking. I was in the middle of Australia, camping out literally in the middle of nowhere. We were doing 4-wheel drive from Ayers Rock to
you can't be near a city, or else you won't see it.
We were literally thousands of miles, hundreds and hundreds of miles from anywhere, and that night sky, it remains with me, was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen.
It is,
and it's just phenomenal. And you just think, oh my God, how have I never seen that? And it's because you need to be just in the middle of nowhere.
Right. You got to have no. Yep.
Did you have another super chat? Because I wanted to.
Yeah, we have a couple more.
I don't want to interrupt you.
I just don't want to interrupt anybody. Hopefully, I didn't skip anybody. Let me just make sure that I didn't skip anybody. I think this is the next one. Damn, there's a lot of comments. Yeah, this. Oh no, Graham Pong. I skipped Graham Pong. I'm sorry, Graham Pong. You're next. So yeah, sorry about that.
Human
Graham
study.
Pong. What's the difference between extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional aliens? How can the difference between the two be discerned? I have no idea.
So basically, it's kind of a physics questions. Are there actually other dimensions that things can even exist in? That's an open question. Or even are other dimensions that you can reside in? And also, when we say extra dimensions, a dimension is something different to a physicist as to a sci-fi author. So, more consistently in my mind is an alien living in another universe, like in a multiverse setup. As best as we can tell, though, we probably can't travel between multiverses. It's already hard enough to travel to the stars. Now to travel to the space between space, we're very much outside of what we can physically justify.
It's interesting when you talk about dimensions. We use 4 dimensions, space, time, blah blah blah. What does extra dimension mean? What would that look? Is it just something that you can't even conceptualize, or is it just another way of saying, as you say, multiverse? Which is interesting actually. So we don't really talk an awful lot about multiverse in the book, because we're talking about our universe and aliens in our universe. But there is, in astrotheology, a lot of thought as to the multiverse as well, and whether incarnations and all the same issues we've been talking about. I mean, imagine you've got the problem of multiple incarnations, but now you're taking it across literally millions of universes. Then this problem is just
it'd be more than millions. I mean, if in particular in cosmic inflation, universes are being created all the time, continuously and forever in infinite numbers. So yeah, if cosmic inflation is correct, the number of alien civilizations is infinite or will be infinite.
Yeah. So about the before I go to the next one, the interdimensional, extra-dimensional ones, is that just some sci-fi theory, some hypothesis? Like, is there anything to that at all? I don't. What do you think?
So, like I say, the way the word dimension gets used in science versus in other parlance, it can get confusing. So, the way that I would make it as scientific as possible is to say other universes, and the multiverse hypothesis is a scientific view of cosmology. It's actually the natural outcome of cosmic inflation, and inflation is something that we actually currently use to explain the very early universe, so like the very early moments of the Big Bang, or just after the Big Bang. So it's not that crazy or implausible. On the other hand, if you're talking about something living in higher spatial dimensions, like we live in 3 dimensions versus 2 dimensions, like a sheet of paper.
Right.
Could something be living in 4 spatial dimensions or 5 spatial dimensions? That is much more in a science fiction realm. We don't have any justification for that.
Sure.
Yeah, so string theory, there's sort of 10 dimensions, isn't there?
But they're also all compact. You can't live in the 6th dimension.
Yeah, it's just it's just all part of the same reality, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Humans, Augusto Mimicat, once again, thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate throwing these. I really appreciate it.
I love this. This is fun.
Humans study the backsides of animals and insects all the time. Some even make it entire careers about it.
Yeah, so I'll have a stab at this. So we do that when it's really quite simple for us to do that. So we'll travel to a meadow and we'll pick some beetles and then we'll bring them back home and then we'll look at their backsides or whatever. And we'll do that but what we're not doing is going at the speed of light or something like that across galaxies to secretly hang out, not be seen, and then do that. But then these are other intelligent beings rather than interact with them, so I don't know. It just seems that, yes, that is an analogy that goes some distance, but I just think it doesn't quite do justice to what we do in trying to understand our natural world and what aliens would do traveling across the universe to do that, and especially since that they could probably find out most of those things just if they've got the technology to travel across the universe, then they've probably got the technology to be able to find out a lot about us without having to randomly pick weird people to investigate in weird ways.
Yeah, and let's also note that unlike ants, aliens could talk to us. Like, we could at least communicate because we'd both be intelligent. The same can't be said for insects. And, we also have a sense of, hey, taking someone and making them suffer when you could at least explain what you want to do and get consent is highly unethical. So if the aliens spend gargantuan amounts of energy to get here and, don't even take me out for drinks first, come on, this seems...
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. That's a great point about consent, because if we're assuming aliens are going to do that, we're also assuming that they're going to be moral creatures. Then, we are getting to a place now where there is serious conversation about animal rights. And what we should do with other primates, with dolphins, with elephants, and there are really good philosophical arguments that they should be afforded human rights or the same rights as humans have. And so, an alien life form that's got to the point where they can travel across the universe has probably reached that point already and would have some kind of ethical dimension, you think. But
I'm looking at it like what, I'm not saying anything's possible when you can't rule it out, because it's like, okay, we can't falsify this maybe. Like, what is the likeliness when you really start thinking about the kind of work it would go into in traveling or traversing the universe, number one. And also, when we hear all about these backside abductions that people are getting probed on, how common is that? Which I don't know. I mean, how common is that? And how often are they doing brain investigations where they're cracking open the skulls and then we have surgery marks where they actually examine the brain? Or how often are we having, they literally physically need you to probe your butt, but they can't do all these other examinations? Like, what's the deal? Are aliens just fetish? Is there a fetish to travel the universe for humans to, what's the deal? Like, it just seems.
And also there's this scenario where I think Carl Sagan talks about this in The Demon Haunted World, which is, these sorts of phenomena have happened previously, but it used to be put down to like demons and angels and things. And so it's just, a new era, new context, same old stuff. But now we don't have those demon angel experiences. I mean, there are people who, but not in the way that's analogous to the alien experiences. And so that, there's just psychological phenomenon going on.
That's a good point. That was the as of right now last super chat so far. Yeah. If anything,
is it? can we go to one of the first ones, which is problem with theism? And there's an issue that I have that, again, it's another cake and eat it too, which is a fine-tuning argument. And I get really annoyed because the fine-tuning argument's got just heaps of problems. But what happens is Christians say, look at all these constants, and we're on a knife edge here, and humanity can it's just right, Goldilocks, blah blah blah, and there's this one instance of life, and this proves that God exists, because oh my goodness, it's so if we change any of these, then life wouldn't exist.
It's like saying my legs are just long enough for me to stand.
Yeah, but
that's
then
a dumb question.
But then what's odd here is it's just tenuous. Life can just happen tenuously here in one instance. Therefore, it proves God exists. And then imagine a scenario where the universe is teeming with life. Absolutely life everywhere. It's coming out of every planet. It's dropping out the atmosphere. There's just life everywhere you look in the universe. The Christian would go, or the theist would go, look at this. The universe is so fine-tuned for life that there is life absolutely everywhere. So you've got this spectrum of life can only just exist, therefore God exists, to life exists everywhere and it's really easy to exist, therefore God exists. It's like, hang on, you just, whatever evidence is there, you are using that to prove that God exists. And that's just not on. I'm not having it, especially when in this particular circumstance, actually the universe is more fine-tuned for death and for black holes and for stuff not to exist. There's far more easy ways to die than there are to live. And so, the fine-tune. So we discuss a fine-tuning argument in this kind of way in the book.
Yeah, I've always said, like, if you're going to point to how this universe is just such a mystery, how are we here, what started all this, and use that as sort of like a way to like hint at there's got to be something beyond this, sure, go ahead. But don't be like, therefore the Bible, or therefore the Quran, therefore this is true, therefore my call, therefore I'm a prophet. Like all those giant jumps in logic, just you're not, it's not working. Like you can have those philosophical, I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody feeling that way. Like I look at the universe, I'm amazed that I'm here. Why is there something rather than nothing? I think there's something out there. That's a natural thing for a lot of people to feel, because not everybody's a philosopher. Not everybody's, has been working through these arguments as much as like someone like Jonathan MS Pearce is. So they're just going to feel that way regardless of what you say. I get that. But the leap in logic from going from therefore that Christianity must be true and Jesus must have died for your sins, that's where you just lose me.
That's that jump in the Kalam cosmological argument of going from exactly that, from like the Kalam cosmological argument argues causally that God exists, and then it's like, and then you get to the Christian God. It's like, okay, there's a whole load of other moves there.
Right? Like how did you just end up there? It's just like, oh, because you want that to be true. And that's what it comes down to. They want it to be true. So
the other philosophical argument we look at a little bit is the design argument, so teleological arguments, and this is or actually more accurately teleological arguments, which are arguments of poor design. So when you look at you can get onto like the Adam and Eve argument of like, why would God design people to fail, a faulty design, and then ask for payment back for that? So it's getting back to these atonement arguments, and you're like, okay, so we've really cracked design here, and we're morally bad and things go wrong. But if that's happening billions of times throughout the universe, then God's a really, really crap designer. Do you know what I mean? And then we get on to discussions about whether having an issue once and then multiplying that a billion times, does that make that any worse? Is the probability compounded in any way, or is it just because it's bad once and it's bad a billion times, it doesn't actually affect the probability of whether God exists at all? So these are discussions we have in the book.
Absolutely. I just wanted to let everyone know, you have a YouTube channel. It's a great channel. Check it out.
Please hang out.
Subscribe. The only reason why it doesn't say that I'm not subscribed, because if you look at the top right, I'm not signed in. That's just in case.
Oh, yes. Yeah, great excuse.
I am definitely.
Yeah, good one, man. Nice try.
Nice try.
Yeah.
Subscribed.
Neil, you should be creating at least 12 different sock puppets to all subscribe to John.
Nice.
When we get back to our planet, Neil, we're going to talk about this.
Yes. Oh, yeah, by the way, this is our Bible right here. This is our scripture. Aaron Adair, the star of Bethlehem, a skeptical view. Derek, where'd you go?
I think he had to return to Kolob.
Nice. But yeah, this is the book, guys. It's in the description. So look, just click on the description, click on the link, and it brings you right to that book. It's a lot of this. It talks about the star of Bethlehem. Was there really a star? Did the three magi really follow a star? Did this thing happen? He gets the science down. He breaks it down. Is this even possible? Let's use Kepler. Let's use all these different examples of people who are charting down stars for all these times. Let's go back and see if this actually happened. I'm not even going to tell you the answer because it could be true, but check out for yourself. Check out the book and see what he says. So
Get their books.
So to mention another aspect of discussion, I mean the idea that we are made in the image of God. What does that mean? Imago Dei or Imago Dei. What does it mean to be made in the image of God? And if we are made in the image of God, what about aliens? Is this a physical image or is it like rationality? And then you can start having discussions about whether, again, using the Copernican principle, the principle of mediocrity, where if we are somewhere in the middle of all that we could be, then actually we're pretty rubbish examples of rationality of what a human could be. And then what's that say about we're made in the image of God? Because actually we're made pretty poorly in the image of God, and actually there will be an awful lot of alien species that are made even better, even greater in the image of God, or even more moral, even more intelligent and rational. And so there's a lot to be said for the discussion about made in the image of God. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Aaron.
Yeah, it also reminds me actually from the paper that we're responding to when they say, well, the Bible doesn't talk about aliens in the same way that if you're husband and wife and one of them is writing to you, they don't mention their other past romantic interests, and that's the excuse for why that's not being brought up. It's just not relevant to the current relationship. But on the other hand, if God has a deeper relationship with the aliens because they do a better job of conforming to the divine image, that'd be like saying, me not telling my wife about the 10 other women I'm having affairs with and I'm spending more time with than with my wife. It seems like it is relevant that I'm not talking about that because I'm proving to be a terrible person to have a relationship with. I'm definitely gaslighting if I'm not telling you about that and saying, oh no, you're my special person, and then tell that to 1,000 other people.
Yeah. So, and it's funny, Derek wasn't here in the beginning when I mentioned this, but if you guys can see that, you probably might not be able to. At the back of this is Ralph Ellis sent me his book because he thought that if I read his book, everything would make sense and I would stop criticizing his theories. And it's right on the back there. It says the Holy Grail was brought to the earth by aliens. So he argues that in his book. And I'm just letting you guys know that's what Ralph thinks. And King Arthur also battled Vespasian, who's also Jesus, by the way. So it makes a lot of sense. It's perfect.
So So there are loads of issues to do with sort of epistemology as well with aliens, and so if you believe in a single incarnation of Jesus, right, as being able to do the whole redemption for the entire universe, what must happen then is that aliens must get some kind of narrative of that, some kind of communication of that happening, whether it's like a film or story playing out for them. But then this just talks of like earth chauvinism, because imagine how powerful that is for us as humans, knowing that God was Jesus in human form and was a carpenter in Nazareth and sacrificed, and we can make films like the Passion of Christ, and it's really evocative and emotive. But then imagine if we are actually aliens and the proper one single incarnation happened in another galaxy and it involved some kind of gaseous substance or some kind of tentacled being. Like psychologically, we would not be able to empathize with that story nearly as well as we would with our own narrative involving a human deity. And so therefore this is one of these arguments against a single incarnation, is that really it does look to be much more advantageous for humans. We would get greater value out of that narrative and that story. And if we get greater value out of that narrative and story, then that is inherently unfair to every other ETI in the universe. So, you know, wherever you look in the whole alien discussion here, there are just problem upon problem upon problem.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. And you made a good point. Is like in the image, man is made in the image of God. Okay. What does that mean? Like, you make a really good point there. It's like that this can only be something that can only make sense if this world is all there is, unless by some miraculous chance aliens look exactly like us, which would defy science, because we're sort of based, our genetic makeup is based upon, we lost Aaron. He probably just got disconnected, but he'll be back. Our genetic makeup is based upon the world around us, like the oxygen, the water we drink, the food we eat. That's what makes up our genetic makeup. And another planet has a different atmosphere. The life's going to look different, and they're going to behave differently, right?
Yeah,
most likely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna broadly agree with you. Yeah, and you know, this then leads on to discussions of what is personhood. So if being made in the image of God is to have personhood, then do we have what is personhood, and would aliens have the same personhood? But then it kind of goes back the other way, and this is to kind of get off aliens a little bit and go into philosophy, which is, how does God have personhood? So if God exists, first of all, God existed timelessly, eternally, so with atemporally. How can God can't think, God can't deliberate, God can't make choices, because in order to do that you need to weigh up options and blah blah blah. But God already knows everything and has the optimal option in the forefront of his mind, and actually without time you can't even think and have deliberation. So it just, the creation of the universe is just instantaneous. Then God enters into time. But then if God has to do everything with according to his own omnibenevolence, then God has no free will. Yeah. And then so you start getting onto all these discussions about, well, what is personhood, and B, it doesn't look like God has personhood. And then what does it mean to say we're made in the image of God? Yeah. If we have these kind of aspects that God doesn't have. And so it just, the whole thing's just a hot mess.
I want you to hold that thought, because Derek, I know you got to go soon, you got a show coming up, but with all the anti-Semites watching, listen, you guys figure this out. We are paid. We are Zionists. We are paid by Israel. So Rabbi is our holy savior. So,
got us.
So let me just show you our this is our secret intro that only secret Patreon people can see. But I'm gonna have to just reveal it to the world.
I mean, they already know. Why not?
The word for the Garden of Eden, Kedem. Numerical translation, 144. Now the value of tree of knowledge, all right, in the garden, right? Eitz HaChaim, 233. 144, 233.
Theta. The Greek symbol for golden ratio, golden spiral.
Wow. I never saw that before. That's like that series you find in nature? Like the face of a sunflower?
Where are the spirals?
You see this math everywhere.
Now, some of you are probably wondering, what the hell is that even meant to do? Well, Derek's got a video coming up. The reason why I made that intro, because I can't find it on here. For some reason, it's not on here.
We'll be live in 2 hours and 15 minutes or so.
Oh, that's the one you're doing tonight? The one?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, but I was saying I got to prepare for tomorrow's show, too, because I got a bunch of stuff coming up.
Oh, that's perfect. What you just saw is a perfect taste of the idea of there being codes in Scripture that point to Jesus. Right, and you're about to tackle that with Dr. Kip.
Yeah,
is it real? Is it not? Find out by watching Myth Vision.
So that one is actually going to be. That's not tonight.
Oh, okay.
And that's not tomorrow. That's on Monday with Dr. Kip.
All right.
And we're going through genealogies in Genesis 5 to show like this idea that this like the names of the patriarchs somehow are telling you the gospel. Like Adam means man, and the next name means appointed, and then like man appointed to die, but Savior will come. And like based on the genealogies, they found some code
Right.
Anyway, we're gonna debunk that. But yeah.
That's gonna be good. Yeah. So that's why I made that intro, and be on the lookout for that video. But yeah, you got a video coming up soon, so everybody scurry over there after this is over.
Yep. Guys, I hope everybody gets the books. I mean, the reason why is if they do, take the time to consider it's that or eternal conscious torment. And if they don't buy the books, let me know. I will make sure they feel the wrath. But I love them. But they will feel the wrath. And they don't want that. So just get the books, Seriously, go subscribe to Jonathan's channel. By the way, Jonathan, I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Wathi that you interviewed.
Yeah, John Wathi. Yeah. Oh, brilliant.
I got in contact with him, and I hope to take a deep dive into that with him as well. But yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, so check out the video with myself I did with him. He's a neuroscientist about why we believe. Yeah, absolutely fab.
Exactly. I'll meet you guys later. I'm going on the backside of the moon, and yeah, we'll just talk about our hidden agendas over there.
Shabbat shalom.
Take care, Derek. Sorry.
Okay,
yes.
guys.
No, sorry, I wasn't going to say so. What I was going to say is one of the biggest chapters in the book that we have is something we haven't even mentioned at all, which is the problem of evil. So the problem of evil is one of the biggest thorns in the side of Christians or theists in general who believe in omni-God. And why is there suffering why is there suffering when God knows what to do about it, is powerful enough to do something about it, and loving and caring enough to want to do something about it? Why is there suffering and evil? And so you get skeptical theism and all these ways of answering that question. But we look at this and say, right, if again using the Copernican principle, there's going to be suffering that far, far outstrips the suffering we have on Earth out in the universe. Like when we talk about genocide of a people on Earth, you could have entire planetary genocides. You could have, so on and so forth. They're going to be far, far worse. Now, if you look at the principle of like, I don't know, maybe stubbing your toe is the worst thing that can happen on Earth. Then if you said, right, God is all loving, what could explain you stubbing your toe? I think the principle that God could explain that is far easier than genocide and tsunami killing 230,000 people on Earth. In other words, the greater the pain and suffering, the more difficult it is to explain away with an all-loving God. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So therefore, if therefore there is far, far greater pain and suffering on a scale that is unimaginable in this infinite universe, potentially, then that is even more difficult, like way more difficult to explain in light of omni-God. So that's just one of the things we look at in the problem of evil chapter.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting that Jason Sobek brought up this point that Manny in the Manichaeism religion has this idea of everyone having a spiritual twin that exists in another dimension. Now, I know the Platonists have an idea of there being a perfect form of everything that exists in this universe. So that's sort of, I wonder if that relates to that or not. But
yeah.
But also, and I want to hear your thoughts, Aaron, too. But also, the idea that in Zoroastrianism, it sort of cancels out this problem of evil because you have two dualist opposing forces. And they both are equal. They both don't know what the other side's doing. They're not all knowing. They're not all. They sort of defeat that problem. And I think that's interesting. And I wonder why that wouldn't just be the norm for any religion. But I guess it sort of defeats the purpose of giving people the idea of, like in the Platonism, and Plato actually has this in the Republic, where a good religion ensures good people that they're going to go to heaven. So I guess that sort of trumps everything else. You need an all-powerful God for that. So it's sort of like a struggle in theology happening with the problem of evil, the problem of having an all-powerful God that makes sure everything's okay. So where do you know what I'm saying? What do you guys think about all that?
Yeah.
No, you go for it.
All right. Yeah. So first off with the Mani thing. So I suspect this is derivative of Platonic thinking because you see the same ideas in Philo that the perfect forms of all the things that exist here on Earth, including trees and temples, already exist in heaven, and we just have imperfect copies here. so that we have our divine twin in heaven, not necessarily another dimension, just, in the conception of Mani, it would have literally been up there. And then our version down here is just that crude copy, and whatever relationship we have with it might be through astrological forces. Because in Manichaeism, there's a lot of astrology and astrotheology that's part of that as well. That there's a lot of that sort of direct influence of heavenly stuff on earthly stuff. That was the big thing I wanted to say there.
I think there's what humans really, all humans ideally believe in just world theory, which is to say that we really struggle with unfairness. And in fact, we can see this in bonobos and other primates, that fairness is kind of built into us, innately. And when we look at the world and see how crap it can be and how desperately unfair it can be for people, that doesn't sit well with our sense of fairness and the idea that the universe must be fair in some kind of way. So humans over time have thought up lots of different ways of explaining this or balancing the books. And the afterlife is the prime way of balancing the books. Because as soon as you get heaven and hell, then you can justify why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people on earth, right? In our lives. So that's the afterlife. But there are other things, yin, yang. There's all these sort of understandings of balance that you see in lots of religions and lots of cultures around the world. And they're just different ways, really, of explaining the apparent unfairness of the world that I would say isn't apparent. It just is unfair, and deal with it. But that's the skeptic, atheist, naturalist in me. But for most people, people don't like that. When one of my twins particularly, when he watches a film where it doesn't have a happy ending or there's not a happy bit, he just can't handle it. And in fact, he starts inventing. He says, well, perhaps that person didn't die, and actually this happened and that happened. And then so he invents an alternative narrative in his head that creates a balance for him. And it's fascinating. Like, I sit with my philosopher's hat on and my psychologist's hat on, and I watch him watch a film and create these narratives and ways in which, like, actually in the end, it's all balanced and perfectly fair and fine. And it's just like, wow. And he's like 11, 12, and he's doing that. Actually, we all do that. And it manifests itself in many different ways, including religion. I'm sorry, that's a lot of me banging on.
No, that's, we lost him again. You're making good points there. It's like, that's what I think we have to be honest about these religions and these theories and these theologies. Like, they're just different ways of trying to explain all these problems. And every religion has the one thing that they have figured out, but then it balances off to, but they also don't explain how this could work. That religion explains it. Oh, Taoism explains everything. Oh no, but it doesn't explain how there could be a creator. Okay, well, this Judaism explains that. Oh, but that doesn't explain the problem of good and evil. Oh, Zoroastrianism explains that. So you end up with a whole different buffet of.
So we talk about etiological stories, and etiology is explaining phenomena, right? So in different religions and cultures and histories, we have stories that have created to explain things. For example, Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's wife is turned into a pillar of salt, explains how there's the Lot's wife rock, how there's this rock that exists that looks like a woman type thing, and also how the Dead Sea is so salty and all this kind of stuff. So that's an etiological story to explain that. Right. Uluru in Aboriginal Australians, like Ayers Rock, is explained in such and such a way. But religions as a whole are etiological stories and narratives that explain not just individual instances, although they have collections of those stories, but are just a story to explain reality, experience, and everything. And so, that's exactly what religions do.
Yep. Yeah. I can see how in the beginning, like early on, maybe, in antiquity, Middle Ages, I can see how it could be useful to an extent. But I also, and I actually I don't know if you guys know who Daniel Schmachtenberger is. He's a philosopher. I can't say. Great thinker, man. Yeah, well, I was watching some of his interviews. He's talking about something that me and Richard Carey did a whole video about, how when we look back far enough, the ancient Greeks, not just the Greeks, but the Chinese too, had very high level technology, like the Antikythera computer, basically. And then all of a sudden, right around 1st century till like 10th century, it's like everything just stops. Not stops, but like really slows down. And it's like we did that, our own fault. So we have the capability as humans. We're not like, we think it's all like autopilot. Everything's going to be fine. We're just going to keep progressing through the ages. No, we have the ability to shut ourselves down and to shoot ourselves in the foot. And a lot of that has to do with religion and like fanaticism and dogmatism that really, really hinders the growth of civilization. You know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when it comes to all of the things we're talking about, and particularly the problem of evil argument, as far as I'm concerned, I often talk about abductive arguments. So you have your deductive arguments, your inductive arguments. So deductive arguments are your logical arguments that lead you inescapably to a conclusion if you agree with all the premises. Right? An inductive argument is all about probability. Every swan I've seen is white, therefore the next swan I'm going to see is white. All swans are white, that kind of thing. It's a probability, but it doesn't follow necessarily from the premises. Now, abductive arguments are inferences to the best explanation. So it's like, okay, I have two hypotheses, for example, omni-god theism and naturalistic atheism. What does this data better support? Which of those two hypotheses? And likewise, you can flip it and say, what do these two hypotheses predict? Right. So then when you're talking about the problem of evil argument, you say, right, if we start with omni-god theism, what would we predict of the universe? What would if you knew nothing else about the universe, what would you think the universe would look like? If God is love, God is infinite love, would it look like a universe full of black holes, full of infinite species of intelligent alien life forms that suffer incredibly, inordinately, far more than we do, according to the Copernican principle? So, is this what we would expect? Or does that kind of universe better support the hypothesis of naturalistic atheism?
Well, to jump in real quick before I want to hear your thoughts too, Aaron, the Greeks, were just brilliant philosophical minds at the time for their time period. You have people like Hesiod, who's writing a theogony, and it's not meant to be literal. You can tell because the deities, the gods, are representations of phenomenon in our reality. So he mentions, and this is actually reflected in Genesis, in the beginning God created heaven and earth. In Hesiod's version, Gaia and Ouranos are two different gods. Heaven and earth are gods, and the firstborn who leaps forth from this is love, eros. So he said basically what he's getting at, if you actually break down this is what I think, this is my own personal reading into what Hesiod was getting at, is that the phenomenon of love and desire is what makes like mankind do things. We don't do things for no reason. We do things because, I need to buy a house because I want to have a roof over my children's head. You do things for your loved ones. I have to go get a job so I can afford and I can go find a good date or something. Everything we do, all of our desire has to do with something some sort of love connection happening between you and the people around you. And I think that's a really good point. And so people who use literalism when they're reading these texts, they lose the whole point of what they were trying to get at in these texts. That makes sense.
I definitely agree that Hesiod, when he is writing his theogony, he is not trying to write history because he gives, for example, multiple versions of the origins of humanity, and just because comes right out and says it. And here's another story of how it comes about. He's clearly not trying to be literalistic, and so if you are just expecting here's exactly how it happened, you totally missed the point. Right. And I forget which of the pre-Socratic philosophers said that things are brought together by love and torn apart by strife, and these are actually like physical processes that actually govern the universe. Though I do forget which of the pre-Socratics there were. There's too many of them, and I don't have enough syllables on my tongue right now to say them.
I can't.
But it does. Of course, the idea that yes, there's definitely love in the world, and there's also clearly strife, and far more strife we would expect than if it was a universe governed by love itself. And as John was pointing out, that's like, yeah, we look at the universe. Does this really look like what you'd expect if there's a loving being that organizes the whole thing? And one of the things that we actually do, it's based on another paper from another philosopher who basically says, hey, if we take the suffering we see on Earth...
Empedocles.
Empedocles, thank you. Yeah, my knowledge of the pre-Socratics can be very iffy at times.
A lot of cleases, a lot of cleases
Yeah.
and teases. Yeah.
And then their cousin Testicles. Oh.
Yeah. Go ahead, though.
Yeah. So we were building off another philosophy paper that was taking the problem of evil and then taking, hey, if we also accept the Copernican principle, whatever is the worst evil we have ever experienced here on Earth, we should actually expect an even worse thing has happened on some other alien world. So if aliens exist, some of them have experienced even worse things than we ever have. And we can actually mathematically model that and say what our expectations would be. So we can basically take and say, here's how bad the problem of evil is on Earth, and here's how much worse it becomes if aliens exist. And we don't know anything else about the aliens. Just if aliens exist, whatever the problem of evil is, it now got this much worse.
Right. Yeah, and so this is really important because then it as I said earlier, it then accentuates the problem of evil. And then if there is some kind of probability that you can attach to, say, going back to the example of stubbing your toe, if stubbing your toe is the worst evil, then explaining that's easier, which means that in some certainly intuitive way, it's more probable that God exists. So the greater the amount of evil, the more difficult it is to explain that away with God. And so therefore, if you're seeing ETIs existing with this phenomenal amount of evil that's all over the universe, which again it then talks about, that indicates a problem of design as well, then it's going to affect the probability of God existing in some way negatively. And actually, Aaron does some maths in that chapter, which is pretty hardcore. But there you go.
Yeah, it'll probably be. Yeah, it's probably the first time we've actually seen like multiple steps of calculus in a philosophy paper.
Yeah. What's his name? Titan Uranus. He made a good point because I said I totally butchered it. It's not that Eros is the firstborn of Gaius and Uranus. He springs forth in the beginning from chaos with Gaia and Aranos. But yeah, you are correct on correcting me for that. So I think I said, did I say Eros was born from Gaius? I might have said that, but that's totally wrong. And you're totally right by saying he's not the firstborn. He actually is the first to spring forth with those two. So it's like they're all born at the same time, basically. But yeah.
Yes.
But the reason I bring that up is not because I think that's true or think literally that's what happened. It's a philosophical concept of the things that we experience, the phenomenon that we experience in this world. There's different things that we experience. We experience love. We experience death. We experience. So we throw deities on those concepts, and then we can sort of navigate through ideas that way. It's a very useful way to do philosophy early on, I guess. What do you think about that, Jonathan?
Well, I was sorry. My mind was elsewhere then because I was just thinking of a Christian response to the problem of evil. So if you're okay to humor me, because my brain I'm struggle with multiple things. Just to let people know, I've got multiple sclerosis, so my brain isn't quite as sharp as it used to be. And one of the Christian responses to the problem of evil issue, or actually generally the atonement of the fall thing, which is, and this is an argument that Christians use for a multiverse. So there are some Christian theologians who argue for a multiverse, and they say if there is a net good in this world, so if even if all the evil exists, but we can explain that evil and it's actually a net good, and if the incarnation, the fall of man and the incarnation and atonement is a net good, then if that's a good thing, then God would want that, being omnibenevolent, to happen as much as possible. So it's an argument to say that actually God would want infinite amount of aliens falling, but then creating a net good, and then arguably infinite amount of universes. In fact, just as much of this going on as possible. So this is an interesting argument, a counter argument from Christians to say that actually you would expect there so the argument revolves around if there is a net good. If there is a net good to everything that goes on in this world, then you would expect that to happen infinitely.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what I don't even know how you can deny that.
Yeah, no.
Well,
were you going to say something?
I was going to say that actually there is something that I think actually makes that inconsistent with Christian eschatology, because if the absolute perfect universe is the one where God allows, infinite levels of suffering like this, and God will never intervene for some greater good, then one of the things that would be the case is like, well, if God is never going to stop at evil, he is not ever going to stop the source of evil, the devil, which basically means the story of Jesus coming back and bringing on the eschaton and bringing heaven on earth, that can't happen because that would then put a stop to evil. Therefore, I don't think that argument can be consistent with, this thing called Christian theology.
That's Stephen Mateson's paper. He wrote a paper, Ordinary Morality Implies Atheism, which is to say that if you believe that there is no such thing as gratuitous evil, then any instance you see evil happening, so for example, if you see your granny getting beaten up on the other side of the road by a little sort of tearaway, then the idea is that you should not step in because you would be stopping the greater good coming about. And it's if you really believe that in the theodicies involved in the problem of evil, then there can be no gratuitous evil. So therefore, like, you should, at least in moral paralysis, so Stephen Mason says, that you should just let people get beaten up and all the evil happen because it will is necessary for a greater good. And so there's this, but he argues that that's obviously nonsense, and therefore, ordinary morality, the fact that we intuitively want to step in and stop that happening is evidence in itself for atheism. It's a lot more involved than that, but that's basically what goes on. And so you look at these ideas that there must be a net good, and you can challenge them. There's something called phenomenal conservatism, which is the idea that it's your intuition. It's like if something looks like it's gratuitous evil, then absent of any defeaters, if you're not going to present me some really clear defeaters as why the tsunami of 230,000 people dying, if you're not going to tell me very clearly and obviously so that I understand that there is that I think that's gratuitous, and I'm justified in thinking that, unless you can defeat that, and just appealing to skeptical theism, appealing to the idea that there could be a reason. Yeah, there could be a unicorn existing somewhere. Doesn't mean there is a unicorn existing. So you can't just, that's not a defeater to say there could be a reason that.
Right. Yeah. I can't stand that when people use their outs. They have so many different outs of like something they speculate on. Like it could be, oh, you don't know what happened, so it has to be this then. It's like,
yeah. This is the possibiliter ergo probabiliter fallacy. So it's possible, therefore it's probable. It's this jump that you see so often in Christian apologists, which is like, this could be the reason, therefore it's probably the reason, therefore it's definitely the reason. I had this when I was arguing against Lydia McGrew with the Nativity on Unbelievable, where I'd say, well, this has never happened in history, and here's an archaeological problem, or here's a historical problem for the Nativity, and she'd say, yeah, but this could have happened, and then therefore that's the answer. It's like, no, that's not good enough. You have to go with probabilities here. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
Yeah, I was. I just wanted real quick though. Somebody, Titan responded and was just to clarify what I was talking about. Where is he? Where did it go? Yeah, this is actually true. There's two different myths. The theogony is the original, Genesis, I guess you will, from the 7th, 8th century BCE. And that's the one where Eros springs forth from the chaos. But then there's the other myth of Eros and Venus, or Aphrodite. And that's it's later reflected in Ovid's Metamorphosis, that Cupid is this little dinky guy that just follows around Aphrodite. It's a totally different portrayal of Eros, but it is true that in this particular myth, Eros is then the son of Aphrodite, which is why Greek mythology is so confusing. You have different Dionysus myths. In one myth, he's the son of Persephone and I think Zeus, yeah. And in the other one, it's Semele and Zeus. Which one is it? Who knows? You pick. Like there's two different. So Greek mythology depending on who wrote it or what playwright it's from or Aeschylus or whoever, it could be different. And that's the point. There's no like canon like the Bible is. It's not like that. Greek mythology is just all over the place.
Yeah, it's also worth noting that you called the theogony like the Genesis. Well, literally, the theogony is theos and genos. It's literally the generation or the birth of the gods. Exactly. It is literally theogenesis.
Yeah, I'm going to use that before I use some random playwright from, you know what I mean? Like, but I guess it doesn't matter. It's not real. It's not like we don't believe this like should happen. They're just stories. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I do also want to build off of what John was saying about like the possibility fallacy, because the way I could usually see the issue with the fallacy of it is, does this apply just as well on the other foot? So in particular, the philosopher Stephen Law and the evil God challenge, that just about every argument that one can give for the all-loving, all-good, all-wonderful God, you can basically turn it into the flip version and say there's an all-evil but all-powerful God. And you can even then talk about not the problem of evil in the world, why is there suffering if there's an all-good God? You can talk about the problem of good. Why is there good in a world run by an evil God? It's like, well, he allows some good to maximize the evil and things like that. And you realize, hey, with just a little bit of word game, I can get to whichever conclusion I want. Maybe these are crap arguments.
Yeah, exactly.
True that.
Robert Harry.
Sorry, just to say really quickly, we spend quite a bit of time looking at skeptical theism as this kind of like the idea that we don't know the mind of God, we can't understand the mind of God, either we don't or can't, and therefore, therefore aliens in its
such a cop out. Such a cop out.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, think about it. It's just like if you every time the goal line gets pushed back. More science, more understanding of the universe, more understanding of who we are as humans, more understanding of evolution, more understanding of everything. The goalpost keeps going back to, we don't know what this is yet. So it could be this, or you don't understand it. We're like ants in a molehill. We don't understand the mind of God. How dare you try to even understand that? It's like, that's just a cop-out. You can't just say that for every answer. And then go from that to, therefore, this Bible has to be true. Even though we know for a fact the flood didn't happen in 2500 BCE when the Bible says it did. And then, by the way, if there was enough, now I'm going on a tangent, but just to end my thought, like, think about this. This is such a big thing, because if there's enough water to cover the globe, guess what? We'd be underwater right now. That one thing refutes the entire Bible. And by the way, what does that have to do with the New Testament? That's the Old Testament. Well, you literally have Jesus himself talking about the flood. You have in the book of Peter talking about how there's 8 people surviving a global flood. It's all over the New Testament. The New Testament doesn't even work without that flood happening. It's literally the defeater of the Judeo-Christianity. I'm sorry, but I think
I do this quite a bit, which is like, I think about, well, that defeats Christianity. Well, that defeats Christianity.
A lot of things.
My big one is slavery. Like, honestly, like I can't believe. So oh, it's not there. So Hector Avalos has written a great book looking at how apologists just excuse slavery in the Bible and how it's really disingenuous. Basically, the fact that slavery exists in the Bible and is countenanced by God, that alone, like, you can just ditch the whole Bible, right? There is absolutely no excuse for countenancing slavery.
Yeah,
I have no time for it. And if you're going to come to me and excuse slavery with all these kind of different apologetics, I'm sorry, there's morally abhorrent.
But the reason why you're right about that, the reason why that's such a big deal, people might not understand this, is because we always talk about there being morality being something given from somewhere else. Like, morality doesn't come from evolution and our environment and how we grow up as humans and how we adapt to our environment. It doesn't come from there. It comes from God, right? That's the argument. So if morality, you and I agree that it's objectively wrong to own a person, where does that morality come from? They'll say it's from God. Well, how come your book says the otherwise? Refuted right there. You refuted your own argument, saying that morality is objective. Morality comes from God, but we agree objectively that slavery is wrong. So then your book is refuted right there, because it automatically refutes it. You can't have it both ways.
And it's hard to say there was any greater good in authorizing slavery. It didn't exactly enhance the character of either the slave or the slave owner. Everyone loses because of that institution.
You're right. Yeah. And then
yeah.
you got
So if you want to talk about soul making or things like that, and that's why it was in there. Well, sorry, we made a whole lot of terrible souls and a whole lot of misery. And in this country, we ended up having to shoot 500,000 of ourselves just to mostly put it away. And I have to say mostly because slavery in this country existed until 1942.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and you have verses in Deuteronomy that are like, yeah, if you rape a girl, well, just marry her and it's all good. Like really, this is God given? No way, dude. No way. Absolutely not. Like you're standing on no ground right here. You're done for. You're it's over with. Like the fact that, and just like apologist is the best word for it. Because I know the word comes from apologia in Greek, where you have like the apology of Socrates, the apology of the Jews is by Philo. So I get the roots of the word, but in English we have this given an apology to somebody. It's perfect. It's perfect because you're apologizing for a bad idea. That's what it should be. I'm glad that's what happened. That's divine justice right there. That the apologist is literally apologizing for bad ideas. It's just funny how that worked out that way. You know what I mean? But Robert Herring, thank you for the super chat. Just wanted to send love from scenic Roswell, New Mexico. We love aliens, and God is the dollar. So win-win.
So that's why the aliens are green. They're full of money.
Yeah.
Stop doing that. Stop doing that, Aaron. Bad jokes.
I'm just giving you more reasons to drink, okay?
No, it's real. It's real. That's true. It's true. Pseudo-Celos. I want to explain Plutarch's theodicy to John. Interesting.
By all means, go for it. I mean, explain it away. I mean, as far as I know, I'm no great expert on the Greek philosophers particularly, but Plutarch, I think, is more about God might not obviously punish people for sins, and you might not know the reasons, but the soul it's all balanced in the afterlife. The problem I have with these kind of theodicies, well, not the problem actually, because okay, where do I start? I'm a moral skeptic, which is to say that no moral value system works perfectly. There is morality is a human construction that's constructed to try and navigate the world in the best way that we can. But there isn't one that works that's out there that is morality, right? And it's definitely true, objectively true, and it exists whether we exist or not. If we die, morality dies with us. So a lot of theists, and Plutarch, I think, as well, would say that, the books are balanced in the afterlife. Well, if you're going to do that, then you're going to be using moral consequentialism, which means to say we can use someone on Earth and treat them badly, but it's all going to be okay because some greater good will happen, or it'll be balanced in the afterlife. But as I keep saying in a lot of my videos and interviews, is that in order to do that, you have to use moral consequentialism, and you also have to possibly understanding the afterlife in a pretty bad way. So heaven is compensation, it's not moral justification. So if you're going to say that if I'm going to come up to Neil and punch him in the face and then give him $10,000, like me giving him $10,000 compensates the moral badness that I did to him, but it doesn't morally justify it. It doesn't make that good. My punching you in the face is not a good action. It's compensated for being a bad action by me giving you money. So heaven compensates the shit that happens on earth. It doesn't make it good, right? So the crap that happens to us isn't now good because of heaven. Heaven compensates us. The only way that you can get a moral justification out of that is by looking at existence as a whole thing and using moral consequentialism in a really strict way. And I don't know Plutarch that well, but it seems to me that that's kind of what's going on with Plutarch. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, he's basically just your average. Well, I shouldn't say average. He's the greatest of the Middle Platonists, and he's like the face of Middle Platonism of the end of the first century, early second century. And that's basically what he brings to the table. And he seems to be like a pantheist as well. He seems to be, and I like Plutarch because he doesn't take the way he, like, if you read his book on Isis and Osiris, he's comparing and contrasting all these deities as phenomena, not as real. This really happened. And we need to all like, make laws based on what Bacchus did when he was in India. Like, he's talking about these ideas in a philosophical way. And I don't know why we lost that. The Greeks did that, were great at that. The Chinese were great at that too. Even India was like, the Hindus were philosophical when they talked about their thousands of gods. For some reason, when the church came along and made all these religions illegal, and it was just Christianity in the West for 1,000, 1,200 years, we lost the idea to think of religion and theology as a philosophical way to describe the world around us. It became literal. It became, this literally happened. Don't question it. Just accept it.
Just to try to defend that a little bit, at the very least, when I look at like medieval theologians and philosophers, you see that philosophical energy going into very abstract analytical questions. I mean,
Sure.
that gets pillared as how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, but it then gets into like, problems of motion and things like that. So, one of the questions that apparently people like Thomas Aquinas actually, questioned about, when an angel goes from point A to point B, do they also go through every single point in between? Or can they just instantly teleport between points? Obviously, this is pretty idle speculation in many ways in that analytic tradition, but this is at least where those philosophical energies go when you have these grounding points that can't be questioned or metaphorized, or only in very, very limited ways. Let's put it this way. Thomas Aquinas was not going to say the flood was just an interesting myth, because then he probably wouldn't have been a saint. He would have been yet one more corpse at the burning of a stake.
Yeah.
Can I just say, someone in the chat earlier asked me a question, I think, about Anunnaki and technology. So Anunnaki being the Mesopotamian, Sumerian sort of deities, as far as I understand. And the idea, it sounds pretty ancient aliens, fingerprints of the gods, Graham Hancock kind of stuff, von Daniken, and all the idea that you got cosmic astronauts and stuff, technologies being brought to us, and how does he explain the pyramids and all of this? And again, it's just like, I think there's a Zechariah Sitchin was a guy that proposed this for the Anunnaki. Is that right, Aaron?
That's yeah, you're in the ballpark.
Yeah. So and pseudo archaeology, debunked kind of stuff. So yeah, I would say
which we also actually go and debunk somewhat in the book as well. I spend some time on. Yeah, so I talk about, for example, how we know the Egyptians built the pyramids, and they did it with, copper chisels, not laser cutters, things like that. And, if, one of the interesting questions, like, if in the sci-fi thing we imagine aliens did come to ancient versions of ourselves and visited, what would that actually do to our ancestors? How would they react? And also importantly, how would we be able to notice that sort of thing? And I actually give the example of, well, how do we normally in general tell when one culture enters in and influences another culture? So like when the first Europeans were coming to the Americas, we can tell in the artifact layers, we can tell the change between, well, here are like traditional Native American artifacts, and then all of a sudden here's this pottery that you only get in southern London or something like that. It's like a very stark difference all of a sudden you can see in that sort of record. Or you can see in language where you see like borrowings between languages. So Chinese has certain words that it borrows from English, and we borrow some words and phrases from Chinese. And it stands out because it's so different. My question is to the ancient astronaut people, what word in our vocabulary did we get from extraterrestrials? Where's the alien layer in the archaeology? So when we go digging in Uruk.
Yeah, finding a rabbit in a pre-Cambrian
yeah,
strata.
Exactly, that kind of thing.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
When I was on D&T, I saw a UFO. It was made of stone.
Interesting.
Was God the stone, or are you just saying another way that you were stoned?
So I remember my friends telling me they saw UFOs on the South Downs in the UK back when we were at college, and it was like, and we were sitting on the South Downs, and it just the way that it moved across the sky, you can't explain it, and all this kind of stuff. It turns out they're on LSD, and so therefore I didn't believe their story one bit.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I've tried.
That's my alien story.
I tried DMT a few times when I was younger, and I believe people when they say those things. That's all. It literally changes your brain, and it's just another dimension. It's something different. But here's the thing: people who think that people who say that DMT is some sort of gateway, some sort of key to. Okay, then why do you have to take a substance for it to work? You ever thought about that? Like, People are like, oh yeah, DMT opens up the universe so you can see things that are there that you can't see when you're not. But why do you have to take a substance for it? You know what I'm saying? Like that just should show you right there. It's chemical.
To me, at the very least, that if DMT was actually some sort of mind enhancer or gives you knowledge, we would see some evidence that people that are DMT users would show like higher IQ or higher levels of creativity or things like that. But here's the thing. Every time I walk by and I see people coming of a bar, I don't see a bunch of people who last night made a really good decision.
You got a point there, dude. And most of the people who are taking DMT are at like music festivals, like, you know, they're like hippies, and you know, it's not like they're like creating. They're not like brain rocket scientists or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I don't hear people coming out from Burning Man, and all of a sudden they've come up with new adjustments to modified dark matter theories for cosmology. That doesn't happen. It's more like, dude, I saw new colors.
Right. Pseudo-celos, the one, intellect, world, soul, matter. This sounds Platonist. This theogony explains the existence of evil due to the ignorance of the world, soul, and the emptiness of matter.
Sounds almost Hegelian. Hegel and the one and the absolute and the spirit. I don't know how to react to that, really.
I think this solution to the problem of evil basically says the ultimate thing that runs the universe isn't all good, because the world, so if it's ignorant, if it's not omni-god, then that would explain things. So this theodicy doesn't save omni-god, it just allows for this other Platonic view of things. And since I'm not a Platonist, I don't accept the starting premises in the first place.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know that I have all that much to add to that. So carry on, Neil.
He's on the phone. He's probably ordering up some cosmic pizza.
Oh, fair enough.
How'd you know? How'd you know? I got a Bills game coming on soon, so I was. Yeah, you're exactly right about that.
Yeah, so I was wondering, you know, as to give one of the last chapters on the Christian section that we have in the book, Aaron, which is one that you wrote on the Christian narrative. Do you remember whether, if you got anything to say about how ETI discovery would fit into Christian narrative and whether that's a problem for Christianity or not?
Yeah, so in the paper we respond to, the way that they are considering narrative is if the aliens showed up, would that screw up the greater story that we're being told about ourselves in the universe? And in particular, if the aliens come by and they don't have good intentions for us. So, you know, the sci-fi films over and over again, like War of the Worlds, the aliens come and they come to conquer, to destroy. And, you know, their thought process seems to be that, you know, they don't explicitly say this, but the scenarios they seem to think are live options is the aliens come and we can hold them off. But the reality is, again, because of the math I did, that the aliens would have the energy capacities that we have by at least a factor of 1,000,000. We have absolutely no chance in winning such a war. And here's how the aliens could destroy us without us even seeing them coming. This mouse is maybe a pound in weight. So if I grab a couple of these items here, I got about 1 kilogram of stuff. It doesn't even matter what the stuff is, but I have 1 kilogram of it. If I can hurtle it at 99% the speed of light and it impacts something, the energy of that impact will be greater than the largest atomic weapon we've ever detonated.
Wow.
And here's the thing. If it's going 99% the speed of light, you won't even see it coming because it's so close to the speed of light, there just won't be that time between the light arriving and the thing arriving. So if the aliens wanted to destroy us, they could shoot relativistic impactors, and the entire planet would basically be hit with the equivalent of thousands of nuclear weapons before we even had a chance to blink, and we'd be gone. That's the end of humanity.
What's far more impressive than that? I mean, that all sounds very impressive, Aaron, and well done. But what's far more impressive is the fact that you went seamlessly from imperial measurements to metric measurements there, and you're American. So my hat is taken off. I doff my cap to you, my good man, for embracing metric in the end, because that's obviously more sensible.
I definitely agree, and I have to be able to translate. But most importantly, I'm a scientist, so I normally use metric. In fact, because I've been trying to force myself more and more, I have my phone to always tell me the temperature in Celsius instead of Fahrenheit. So I'm always having to like tell my parents how hot it is here in Boston or things like that. And they're like, what is that in Fahrenheit? Yeah, that.
But here's an interesting debate because metric makes way more sense than imperial over all the length, volume, weight, and all that. Way more sense. And metric is the obvious winner. But there's an interesting debate over Celsius that it's not so obvious. So the Celsius one is from freezing to boiling 100, and that's a nice freezing to point of water to boiling point of water, and that's nice. But actually Fahrenheit, and I use Celsius and I don't understand Fahrenheit at all, but the Fahrenheit is more granular because it's basically a larger scale, and therefore you can get more accuracy, and actually, you know, the freezing and boiling point of water are pretty arbitrary and blah blah blah. And so it's not so clear cut that Celsius is far more sensible, but still it is obviously cool.
They have their interesting points. And actually, interesting thing, I actually spent a year of doing study abroad in England. And one of the things that I've noticed that the English will actually use Celsius for cold temperatures and Fahrenheit for hot.
Wow.
Yeah, well, you generally only old people use Fahrenheit these days. Seriously,
Fair enough,
like,
yeah.
No one under the age of 60 probably uses Fahrenheit really anymore.
Right. But on the scale, like...
Is that a German word, Fahrenheit? Where is that word?
Fahrenheit, at least... I forget if he was German or if he was Swedish or what, but it's definitely the name of the scientist who came up with the scale.
Yeah. Definitely sounds like a Dutch word, Fahrenheit.
Yeah. Oh wait, I think Celsius was Swedish. Fahrenheit might have been German, but I'd have to check that because I'm not sure.
Celsius almost sounds like a Latin word. Celsius.
It's a Latinization of a Swedish name.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what all the cool kids did back then. If you want to show you're serious, you take your name and you make it Latin. So like Nicholas Copernicus wasn't his actual last name. That was just the Latinization of his Polish name.
What do you think some of that could be in Latinized?
I don't want to say, especially because my knowledge of Swedish and Polish and things like that is bad.
He was born in Poland. Fahrenheit was born in Poland of German extraction. So there you go.
Okay.
But he later moved to the Dutch Republic. So you're all right. All of you are right, probably.
Fair enough. But also quickly, Fahrenheit is useful because on the scale of 1 to 100 on Fahrenheit, that encompasses pretty much all of human experience.
Wow.
But 100, from 0 to 100 in Celsius, well, pretty much after 30, that almost never happens. When you get to 50, you're dead. When you get to 70, you're very dead. When you get to 90, you've been dead for a while. And 100, come on, stop even talking. Even worse, though, is the Kelvin temperature scale. From 0 to 100, all dead. Very, very, extremely. You are a block of ice even at 100 Kelvin.
Wow.
There you go. There's some science for you. So when
Fahrenheit is... Yeah.
When our book does come out, Aaron does include both science and maths and philosophy. So it's got everything.
Yep. It's got science, it's got math, it's got graphs, we got pictures.
That's good.
True.
So
yes, I literally have a graphical version of the problem of evil.
Nice. Well, in the meantime, because guys, I want you guys to be on the lookout for that book to come out. What do you think? A couple months? What do you guys think?
It's going quicker than we thought, but I reckon by Christmas.
Nice. Okay, so that's not too long. So by the end of the year. Yeah.
Maybe.
Well,
maybe a bit longer, because what takes a long time with writing these books is getting endorsements from people.
Sure.
So sending out the book to other people, then getting a forward. We need to think who to write a forward for us, and all those things. Once you've got the book written, then there's a whole load of stuff that just takes a long time, longer than you would like. You're sitting around going, "Come on, why haven't you written this? Why haven't you read this?"
Right. Well, in the meantime, check out Star of Bethlehem. It's in the description, and also subscribe to Tippling Philosopher.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've got a whole bunch of books. I've got about a dozen books on the philosophy of religion. My latest one is 30 Arguments Against the Existence of God, which everyone on Earth should buy at least 50 copies of. So that's a fact.
Show us that nice title and that nice. There you go.
Yeah.
Go
30 Arguments Against the Existence of God, Heaven, Hell, Satan, and Divine Design. John von MS Pearce and forward by Dan Barker. So
nice. Dan Barker is pretty big time. That's good. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron, were you about to say something? I think you were about to say something.
Sorry, Aaron.
Oh, the only thing I was going to say is the other thing that'll probably take a while is coming up with a good cover. Jonathan, if you remember my first attempt at coming up with
Here's your cover right
my
there.
book.
There's your cover, or this one.
That's at least better than what my first version would be, because, Jonathan, if you remember my first attempt at making a book cover for the Star of Bethlehem book, I think you quickly saw, okay, this kid needs a lot of help.
Yeah. No, he did a good job on that.
This iteration came out well. The first one was absolute garbage.
That's a good cover. That's a good cover right there.
Yeah, this one came out well. Like the first draft I just had like the Magi like floating inside a nebula. It was ugly.
They're floating.
Yeah, I can only do things two ways when it comes to art: bad and worse. That's about what I can do.
Nice. Well, with that being said, I think we are finished up here. If anyone else has anything else they want to touch on real quick, or you guys...
if anyone's got any super chats, please get them in. Support Neil in his project, and also, if you've got anything to say or any questions, now or never, really.
Yeah, let's give it one more minute. Let's say it's 7:34. Let's say it's 7:35. Oh no, it's 7:35 now. Now we got another minute. We'll chill. If you guys got an extra super chat, I appreciate that. Helps me out. I'm doing this full time now, so I jumped over that cliff and made the leap of faith, and so far it's been okay.
Yeah, so you guys definitely should be supporting Neil, because he's obviously doing tremendous work here. He makes sure that when he brings the guests on, that he's up to stuff, and so we have these awesome, great conversations all together. You're not going to get this in too many other places, so you better be giving him the love and support he needs. And of course, with this topic, when it comes to ETs, we'll probably have some interesting discussions further about if they exist or not, and to which, if you think they're out there, keep watching the stars, keep looking.
Somebody says, "Can I debate you?" When people ask that, I always say, "What on what? Did I say something that you wanted? Like, it's anything in particular?" I never understood the whole entire debate, just everything thing. Like,
as far as I understand this, I'll jump in here, but I think it was about metric imperial, and I'll happily have that. I'll do that.
Yeah. Actually, he was the pseudo of Pselos was the same person asking about Plutarch's solution to the problem of evil. That's, I think, what he wants to debate.
Listen, pseudo, if you have a specific topic and a specific person that you want to debate, email me. I have my email set up in the About page in YouTube. Go right there, hit me an email, and send me what you think, and I'll inquire on whoever it is, if it's Jonathan, if it's Aaron, if it's myself. Just give me some details. I can't just accept a blind debate about whatever. Like,
the easiest argument against the problem of evil is shit happens, deal with it. Basically, I mean, it's all to do with the plausibility of an omnigod. But if you don't, because really the problem of evil is not a problem if you don't believe in omnigod. So really, it's wrapped up with your version of an omnigod. And the omnigod idea, again, I don't want to be spammy here, Neil, but the omnigod idea has so many problems. I mean, I list 30 in there and talk about 30, but I bring in heaps of different ones with each argument. So there are just so many issues with the omnigod that it's just a broken concept, and the problem of evil is just another set of issues.
I agree.
Yeah. And if we want to also somehow incorporate the other arguments for God out there, like fine-tuning, one of the things that I quickly also would have aside in our book is actually the argument that fine-tuning better supports the idea that we were created by aliens than by God.
Wow. That's going to be in the book?
Very quickly, there's an aside to that points out that if we are arguing that the constants of nature had to be fine-tuned for life, that's a limitation only on a God that has to use nature. God could just make supernature, just have us in heaven, just like that. The only thing that would have a limit to the natural world is something natural, like aliens. So if anyone is going to look at fine-tuning as evidence of cosmic design, it should be evidence for aliens much sooner than it should be evidence for omnigod. So even if we want to take that argument, at best you've proved the existence of aliens, and then you've now made the problem of evil even worse. So as far as I'm concerned, we just keep on winning over here. I'm tired of winning.
Nice. That's a good point. Well,
drop Mike.
Yeah. So that's it. We'll end on that one. And you have just attained true gnosis.
You have just attained true gnosis. The demiurge has no power over you.